Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to tonight's Planning and Development Control meeting. My name is Nikos Souslous. I am the chair of the committee. I'd like to remind all participants of a few housekeeping points before we start. The meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and by participating, you are consenting to being recorded. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the meeting calmly by the nearest exit, which is through the doors on the right and main entrance. Toilets can be found through the door at the back of the room on my left. We do expect this going to be a long meeting. At 9:30, if we see the meeting will be going for a while, we will take a break. Sorry, there's a bit of an echo. Okay, thank you very much. And please, can officers and members of the public introduce themselves before speaking for the first time, and make sure you use your microphone. We'll let you know how to do it if you do not know. So we have a big item today, one item, and we move straight in. First, we have also apologies for absence from Councillor Melton and Councillor Pascal Toulbray. And declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. No, I should say just for my part, back during the pandemic in 2021, I worked for a community organization. I did apply and we did receive a grant from ACDC, but that hasn't influenced my thinking, and I still approach this with an open mind. Minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 11th of November 2025, are the minutes agreed? Thank you very much. And item number 4 is, of course, the discussion on the Earls Court development, and can the presenting officers, who have John Sanchez, Catherine Slade, and Alan Jones, introduce the presentation?
Thank you, Chair. My name's John Sanchez. I work in the Strategic Applications team, and I'm the named case officer on the planning application. I'm going to run through the presentation of this hybrid planning application this evening, relating to part of the Earls Court development site, which was submitted to the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. A similar application has been submitted to the Royal Borough of Kensington-Chelsea and is pending consideration. Along with my colleagues, Catherine Slade and Alan Jones, we will summarise the proposals and the comments received. Before I start, I'd like to draw the members' attention to the addendum. So on the addendum, there's a table with a list of late representations. These are the representations that were received post the publication of the committee report. There is also one further representation that's been received since the production of the addendum. So I'm just quickly going to summarise. We've had a representation from the West London Business, the West London Chambers, Imperial College London, who are in support of the application. We've also had a representation from the Hammersmith bid, who again strongly support the application. The general theme across all the letters of support are about the development bringing much needed homes to the borough, especially affordable homes, relating to the commercial uses, that this will be an exemplar net zero development. It will increase and bolster the night economy, and also about upgrading the routes and connections between the two boroughs. I also wish to draw the members' attention to some additional conditions. So they're from, on the addendum, they're from page 71 to 72. So these are additional conditions that we're bringing forward with our recommendation. The other key point I wish to bring the members' attention to is the insertion of section 18 into the committee reports, Unfortunately, this section of the report got missed in terms of the final publication, so we've now brought this to the members' attention. And then finally, I wish to bring the members' attention also to some amendments to the heads of terms in terms of the Section 106 agreement, which are listed from page 419.
Sorry, Chair, just on that, my apologies. There are a couple of other heads of terms as well that we would like committee's agreement to put on. One relates to an architect retention clause, which, as you know, is quite common on schemes of this size and has been discussed previously with the applicants. And the other one is to secure the public access and a viewing gallery. Again, these are matters that have been discussed outside of the tallest building itself, so hopefully both of those will be fine.
So as I pointed out, there are two separate hybrid planning applications that have been submitted to both boroughs. So a hybrid application is a part detailed, part outline planning submission. The report deals with the hybrid planning application that's been submitted to this borough, and it's for a mixed-use regeneration development. The planning application was received in August 2024 and have been subject to two statutory consultations. The first consultation period took place from the 20th of September 2024 to the 25th of November. During the course of our consideration of the planning application, discussions took place in terms of amending certain plans and documents. These amended plans were received by the local planning authority in the summer of this year, and we carried out a secondary statutory consultation which commenced on the 10th of September until the 13th of October. Now, this is a major planning application which is referable to the Mayor of London. There's a summary of the GLA Stage 1 report, which was received on the 11th of October 2024 in paragraphs 5.27 to 5.32, along with the rest of the consultee comments that have been received. All the representations received up to the publication of the committee report, including summaries of the comments received from the amenity groups, societies, and individual residents or businesses, are also summarised in section 5 of the report. Due to the scale and nature of the proposed development, an environmental impact assessment was formally scoped and an environmental statement was submitted in accordance with the 2017 regulations. This was subsequently amended through the ES addendum, which was received again in August this year. So just in terms of some background, a planning application was approved by both boroughs back in 2013. This was an outline planning permission for a much larger residential-led development. The first reserve matters application was approved by both boroughs for land which was in the area where the former exhibition land was. And then between 2015 and 2017, the two former exhibition centre buildings and most of the associated structures were demolished. During that course of time, the new owners of this land to the south, or the former exhibition land, have been in discussions with both local planning authorities, the GLA, TfL, and a number of statutory consultees about bringing forward a new development for the site. These discussions have been ongoing for about 5 years. And also during the course of that period, both boroughs have dealt with and have brought forward a series of temporary meanwhile uses, particularly on the former exhibition land. This next slide shows that the extent of the application site. So the application site covers approximately 18 hectares, which is about 40 acres. The land within LBHF is to the left of the black line, which is the administrative boundary between the two boroughs. So the application land in LBHF is approximately 10 hectares. The land in RBKC is about 8 hectares. The site is located entirely within the West Kensington ward. The site is bounded by West Cromwell Road to the north, Lily Road to the south, the residential properties on the West Kensington and Gibbs Green Estate and Beaumont Avenue to the west, and the large Empress Estate, the Mopac building, to the southwest. Part of the application site historically housed part of the Earls Court Exhibition Centre. As I say, they were demolished between 2015 and 2017. There's a green corridor that runs roughly along where the West London line is. This is a designated Grade 2 site of importance for nature conservation. The site is almost entirely within flood zone 3. And in terms of public transport accessibility, this varies across the site because of obviously the size and existing walking infrastructure. So parts of the site, particularly at the eastern and the southern parts, are, because of their proximity to Earls Court and West Brompton Station, they're within a PTAL of between 6 and 6A. But there are other areas, particularly to the west, adjacent to the West Kensington estate, which have a lower PTAL of around 2 to 3. The land also includes the former includes the depot land, which is this area here to the north. This is an operational depot run by London Underground. As I said, in terms of proximity to public transport, we've got the free tube station, Earls Court Station off Warwick Road, West Brompton Station to the south, which is served by the District Line and also by the Overground and National Rail. And then you've got West Kensington to the west, which is served by the District Line. There are approximately 9 bus routes around the site, and there's the TfL bus lay-by, which is just here to the south of the Empress State Building. So the next 2 images are 2 aerial images of the site in context with the surrounding area. So the dotted line you can see is effectively the boundary between the 2 applications. To the west, you've got the LBHF, and to the east, RBKC. And the borough boundary, as I said, runs broadly on a north to south axis. And the site is located within the Earls Court and West Kensington Opportunity Area, which is identified in the London Plan. This supports the delivery of 6,500 new homes and over 5,000 new jobs by 2041. The site is also within the Fulham regeneration area in our local plan, and it's allocated as a strategic development site under strategic policy FRA and FRA1. And my colleague Catherine will be expanding on this. Except for a small part which is located within the Barons Court Conservation Area in the northwest corner. I'll just take you, which is this area here. and the Filbridge Conservation Area, which is in RBKC down here to the southeast. The rest of the site is not in the conservation area. The site is surrounded by numerous other heritage assets, both listed building and buildings of local interest. So as I pointed out, the next two images are two aerial images. So as you can see, the application site itself in LBHF is quite irregular in shape, and this is primarily due to the railway and underground infrastructure that crosses the site. The topography across the site is also varied, with an approximately 8-metre difference in site levels. The general character of the site in our borough is split between the land, which was obviously part of the former exhibition centres, Lily Bridge Depot, which includes Ashfield House, which is the tall office building here to the off West Cromwell Road, and properties on Empress Place and numbers 2 to 26 Lily Road. This next slide, again, just shows the image looking westwards. So what you can see in the foreground is the large Empress State Building. You can also see the Kensington and Gibbs Green Estate just to the north of the depot land, and the two crescents within RBKC, Filbridge and Eardley Crescent. When the demolition works were carried out back in 2015, there was one element that was retained, which is this deck structure, which is also within the report, is referred to as the table. The deck expands over the overground line, and in effect, it connects the two boroughs at this point. The deck was formerly part of the servicing link between the two former exhibition centre buildings. So this deck is going to be retained, and it will form, so it's going to be repurposed, and it will form part of the overall landscaping strategy that's proposed within the scheme. It's approximately 200 metres in length and about 80 metres in height. So when I was explaining the difference in topography, clearly what the difference is that within the development, you're having to get from +4 up to +12, which is at the top of the deck. Again, the next few images are photographs and aerials of the surrounding areas. So the first one is the West Kensington and Gibbs Green Estate, which was built predominantly in the 1960s and 70s. It adjoins the Lily Road Depot, and you've got a photograph there in the top corner, which is a view looking southwards along Isgale Avenue. The next image is the next key access point to the site, which is off Beaumont Avenue, near West Kensington Station. Beaumont Avenue connects to North End Road. It's made up of these very nice mansion blocks, and there's a former industrial building at the end, which is currently being operated as a temporary theatre use. The next set of photographs are photos taken from of the parade at 2 to 26 Lily Road, which includes the Prince Public House and the properties in Eardley Crescent. Sorry, in Empress Place. This next slide just is to explain the makeup of the planning application. So as I explained, it's a hybrid planning application. It's made up of detailed and outline components within each application. The dark blue shaded areas are the two detailed components one in each borough. So the detailed element in our borough is this sort of L-shape plot, zone, which will comprise of a series of development plots. And the rest of the site, which is in this sort of lighter colour, is the outline component in both boroughs. So the application is made up of a series of development zones and which are captured within the parameter plans. So whilst the detailed component is a fixed development in terms of the scale, design and layout, the outline component is controlled by a series of what we call control documents, which are the development specification, parameter plans and design code. And Alan will expand on those. But this image here shows the general layout of the development zones that are coming forward. So there are 29 proposed, 14 within LBHF, 15 within RBKC. And the sort of the salmon colour areas are the areas of public realm in between the development zones. This next image shows how those development zones effectively then split down into development plots. So the hatch areas on this image are again the two detailed zones, and these show effectively the position and layout of the development zone and plots coming forward. Given the scale of this development, the development itself is going to take about 20 years to build out in terms of how the phasing has been prepared. So this image here shows the indicative phasing plan from, so there are 8 phases proposed, and the phasing is split into 2 possible scenarios. There's the early phases scenario, which next image up is the all land, which is in the coloured zoning. So this is phases 1 to 4. Now these 4 zones are anticipated to take about 13 years to build out. Phase 1 on its own, which is sort of this reddish colour, would take about 6 years to build out. With residential, the first occupation proposed to come forward in about 2030. The next image shows the all phases development coming forward. So this is effectively includes the depot land. Now currently the land is an operational land. The proposal is for the depot to relocate to other facilities in London, and for this land to come forward. But obviously that is still to be finalised. Lastly, for this part of the presentation, I just wish to show you the proposed access and movement arrangements parameter plan. So the key entrances to the site in our borough are for the development plots and the early phases off Lily Road here to the south, which is adjacent to where the bus layover currently is. The key access point for the latter phases would be off Beaumont Avenue here to the northwest corner. There are a series of other pedestrian and cycle access points dotted around the boundary, including along the west boundary with the West Kensington and Gibbs Green estate. There is no vehicle access proposed other than for emergency access. And then this is just a more detailed plan showing the access arrangements for the detailed plots. So I'm just going to pass you on now to Catherine, who's going to deal with the land uses and flexibility.
Thank you, John. Good evening, members. This is going to be the drier section of the presentation, I'm afraid. This table shows the extent of potential uses across the borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. To just briefly describe how it works, the development zones are listed across the top with maximum total floor space within each development zone in bold along the bottom. The different potential uses are listed in the left-hand column with the quantum potentially allowed for within each development zone set out within the grid. The maximum floor space for each use type across borough is specified in the right-hand column. The green column is the detailed plot, so those figures are more or less fixed at this stage. The white ones are in outline, so they are more flexible. Generally, the totals of each column, development zone and row uses is greater than, is less than the relevant, is greater than the relevant maximum cap for each development zone or use. Just to set the wider uses policy context, you'll recognise this as the key diagram from the London Plan, which identifies Earls Court and West Kensington as an opportunity area. That's to say a strategically significant location for housing and employment, which should promote inclusive growth and increase opportunities for all Londoners. There is an expectation that such designated areas are suitable for higher density developments, delivering on the Mayor's good growth agenda. This aligns with local plan designations and upstream London. The site is within the Earls Court and West Kensington opportunity area, sitting within the larger Fulham regeneration area. Proposals for mixed-use developments which provide housing and employment alongside other uses, including cultural facilities, will be supported in such areas. This policy context means that the principle of a development is acceptable, subject to assessment against all relevant planning policies and material planning considerations. You will see this diagram a few times. Apologies, there's a slight delay between two computers. It shows the detailed and outline plots, as John said. I'm firstly going to describe development zone H in detail, which is the darker coloured area within the site. The proposed uses within this development zone are predominantly residential in WBO4 and WBO5, or purpose-built student accommodation within WBO3, with commercial and community uses at lower floor levels. Within WBO4, 278 market housing dwellings are proposed. WBO5 Tower 1 it will provide 114 social rent dwellings, and WBO5 Tower 2 will provide 64 intermediate dwellings. This is a total of 456 dwellings, providing 178 affordable homes for residents. A financial viability assessment has been submitted in support of the application. However, although the proposal is not technically fast-track route when assessed against the criteria in London Plan Policy H5, 35% affordable housing is proposed across the site, which is substantially more than is reasonable given the viability position. And as a result, the LPA are exercising discretion to treat it as being akin to fast track, which is aligned with the position of the GLA. This slide shows typical residential layouts across WBO4 and WBO5 Tower 1. The layouts, as elsewhere within this development zone, show rationally ordered, well laid out dwellings that achieve the nationally described space standards and provide a good quality of accommodation in terms of light, outlook and private amenity space. The majority are dual aspect. The cores are well considered and functional, and members should note that the layouts have been revised since the original submission in response to fire safety regulations during the course of the application. 10% of the dwellings will be wheelchair accessible and the rest adaptable. And the proposed tenure types would be intermediate rent, shared ownership and discount market sale within the intermediate section, and social rent, with obviously market housing being market housing. Within the market housing, there is a special product, a unique product called ERA, Employment Related Accommodation. 15% of market units will be made available for employees of local businesses in order to help the squeezed middle. This slide shows typical layouts of WBO3, which provides 696 purpose-built student accommodation bed spaces. The ground floor on the left shows will largely provide communal amenity areas with retail and servicing below. The typical upper floor level is shown. This is representative in that most floors will provide a mix of cluster flats and studios. There are no standards for purpose-built student accommodation, although they are expected to be functional, and these examples compare favourably with others across London. It's particularly noted that in the studios, the kitchenettes are positioned so as not to be between sleeping accommodation and means of escape in the event of an emergency. Again, 10% of the PBSA would be wheelchair accessible. And also 35% would be affordable. There seems to be a bit of a delay, apologies. Thank you very much. This shows the exterior layout of the detailed plots, where communal external amenity space for occupiers of purpose-built student accommodation will be provided on 2 rooftop terraces. WBO4 will have amenity space at podium level, and WBO5 will have their communal amenity space at courtyard, within a courtyard between the 2 towers at grade. There will also be additional child play space provided within Aidskill Gardens, which is to the northwest of the WBO5 buildings. Across the outline plots, additional housing types in addition to conventional C3 housing and PBSA will be provided, including co-living, which will also deliver 35% affordable housing by habitable room across the build. Within the borough, there is a minimum delivery of 2,000 dwellings across the entirety of the site, up to a maximum of 2,500. This represents a substantial housing delivery for the borough, with 35% affordable housing by habitable room, addressing severe local evidenced housing need. Moving on to non-residential land uses. I'm not going to go through every land use, you'll be pleased to hear, but obviously it's in the report if you want to pick anything specific up. As can be seen, there is a wide variety of uses proposed, and due to the interplay between demand for different uses and the maximum development caps, some may not ultimately be delivered. However, some uses are prioritised in line with the council's priorities, corporate priorities, and minimum delivery requirements are specified in the control documents in a similar way to the residential. These include 50,000 square metres of employment uses, 4,000 square metres of retail, food and beverage and commercial, 500 square metres of cultural floor space, and 350 square metres of community spaces. These reflect the priorities and aspirations of both the applicant and the council to deliver on upstream London objectives and manage the impact of the development on local communities. The detailed plots will provide a range of commercial uses over the lower levels, in addition to residential servicing and lobbies. Within WBO3, this will comprise a retail unit. Within WBO4, general food and beverage and leisure uses, and within WBO5, community uses, delivery of which are secured by condition in relation to public toilets and Section 106 in relation to the community centre. These uses are considered appropriate subject to relevant conditions and legal agreements to protect residential amenity. The impact on existing town centres has been assessed and found to be acceptable subject to Section 106 requirements requiring submission of commercial and town centre strategies in support of RMA's reserved matters applications to ensure delivery of appropriate mix of uses and managing the impact on other town centres as the build progresses. This slide shows the potential range of uses at ground floor level. To give an idea of the degree of flex, you can see the number of boxes represents the number of potential uses that could take place at ground floor level within each development zone. This flexibility is sought by the applicant to provide dynamism and adapt to a changing demand over the build-out period, and it also allows synergies to develop between different uses. But if one use comes forward, it means that another potentially won't, subject to the minimum caps set out in the control documents. And the details of these proposals will not be known until the RMA stage for each development zone. Although the heads of terms require various strategies to be submitted to ensure delivery of vibrant, successful development that responds to needs of the evolving community. An example of how this might be achieved in terms of culture is on the next slide, briefly. This is an example of where activities within a certain use class can be grouped and create synergies across the site. And it's an evolving picture. As the RMAs come in, this may change and flex to respond to need. In terms of the upper floors, this slide shows indicative land uses above ground floor level, with yellow predominantly residential and blue predominantly employment uses. You will see that the blue employment uses form two main innovation clusters focused on Empress Place and West Kensington, which responds positively to the opportunity area aspirations and upstream London objectives. These are also well located in terms of transport and protecting residential development from air quality and noise from the two major highways. In addition, an incubator space will be provided to provide support to SMEs and a scale space for emerging innovative businesses. Up to over 4,000 jobs or full-time equivalents will be provided in R&D and office uses across all phases, which represents a significant planning benefit. And the mix of uses is considered to align with policy objectives and are supported subject to the controls suggested in the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. So just coming on to the design element of the proposal. So the design heritage and townscape implications of the scheme are considered in section 12 of the report. What I'm going to do now is just go through, again, with the model that we've got in front of us, just an overview really of kind of the approach that's been undertaken, both in terms of the scheme itself, what control documents we've got in terms of the outline proposals, and also for the detailed elements, how those scheme elements have evolved. I'll then just go through and just talk a bit about the heritage and townscape impacts through a series of views that we talk to. So just to talk on top of that, sorry, we've also then got a short fly-through video at the end, which hopefully will bring everything together just to enable members to understand completely the proposals. So these first two slides are just kind of the overview of the scheme, which again, you can see on the model in front of you. And as Catherine and John has said, the scheme is composed of two real elements, which are the detailed elements that are here for formal approval, and then the outline elements, which are subject to a series of control documents. So if we just go forward, John, to the next plan. So again, just bringing up this plan that's been presented before. So everything in the kind of darker blue element are the detailed proposals, and everything in the kind of lighter purple are what are subject to the outline parameters and control documents. So just to talk to that in detail, so the outline elements are controlled by three main elements of documentation. That is the development specification, which Catherine's talked to, the parameter plans and design codes, which give illustrative details of how each of those phases should then come forward in terms of details of appearance, character, ground floor active uses, etc. So all of those elements are within those design codes. What is also helpful with the scheme is the applicant has also submitted an illustrative set of drawings that illustrate both in terms of provisional kind of floor plans and elevations about how the overall massing of the scheme could be broken down into a series of more tangible blocks, as is seen on the diagram in front of us. So all of that material is illustrative at this stage, but what we're proposing and what is to be approved is obviously the overall parameters of maximum height datums and parameters of development zones that will come forward. For the detailed plots, this is really important that we've actually got the full details of layouts and elevations to approve for the committee today. So unlike some of our other regen sites, such as White City, where some of the proposals come forward completely in outline consent form, it's really helpful the fact that we've got some detail of these plots, particularly for the tallest buildings within the master plan, that really kind of serve to give some comfort around the overall quality of design and obviously the lasting legacy of those phases as they come forward. Thanks. So just going on to the outline sections first of all, I'm just going to give a quick overview. Now, again, there's hundreds and hundreds of pages that sit behind the design codes and the illustrative scheme for those elements, but just to break this down into kind of some short discussion of where that gets to. So the design code is split into a series of character areas, as you can see here. So these are split against RBKC and our own character areas, and really serve to try and reaffirm for each of the areas of the scheme within our borough really what the quality of those elements should be and how they have individual character that responds to their neighbouring developments, but also seeks to kind of up that quality as we go forward. And again, all of these are referenced and also referenced and acknowledged within the landscape chapters of the coding as well. So just to go through what that means in terms of the actual parameters and where we get to. So in the control document of the design code, this diagram is really helpful to actually indicate how we get from a development zone into individual plots and then get into the maximum parameters on the left-hand side, but then how the codes help us in future through future reserve matters applications to break down what is, kind of quite a big physical box into what hopefully will become more tangible elements of built form. So this goes into, again, details of how plots should be broken up, how they should be split in terms of podiums, and how they should be split in terms of the architectural design from building base to building crown. This is really helpful because I think as we go forward and we discuss some of the townscape and heritage considerations, at the moment they've been based on the maximum parameters. So when you'll see wireframes, they'll show obviously the kind of maximum extent, but that will obviously be controlled further through the reserve matters that come forward. So just taking one example here, so this is built form parameters for the northern extent of the site, adjacent to West Cromwell Road and just behind West Kensington Station. So again, this just gives a flavour of some of the parameters there about how the built form of those plots will be broken up and could be delivered in future. The next page just then also shows some of the coding in relation to the expression of buildings in terms of their format, facades and materiality, and then also the alignment of plots to try and bring more of a place-making element to this in terms of, as you can see in the illustrative scheme, trying to make sure that we've kind of got control and management over that for the future phases. So one of the important elements as well is also the Empress Place character area, which sits at the southern extent of the site within our boundary. So you'll see in the report, one of the key attributes that we're trying to deliver through this is obviously retention of some of those really important characterful buildings on Empress Place and on this section of Lily Road. So there are provisions in there in the parameter plans and in the design codes about how future building form that sits above that should be managed to hopefully reaffirm that character and try and preserve some of that in future. Now, these codes again go into the detail of how we deal with existing facades, how we deal with building setbacks beyond the current parapets of those buildings, detailing of really kind of how those buildings sitting above should be flexed to allow for those elements to come forward. So these are the controls that we've got in this stage. Now, again, as we'll reference in the report, it is really important to consider the fact that whilst there is an established principle of trying to retain these buildings, there is an acknowledgement that if technical issues come up in future, that may not be possible. So it's just worthwhile for members to have that in the back of their mind when we're considering the proposals. So that's just an overview of the outline parameters. And again, future reserve matters phases of the scheme will usually come back to the committee as they have done with other schemes within, the other region areas that we've got. So this is obviously the first opportunity that members will have to see this in terms of the overall scale of what's being proposed, but there will be opportunities for members to consider future reserve matters in relation to those plots as we go forward. But as I say, what we have got is quite a lot of information around the first phase, which is the detailed plots. And as John and Catherine have already mentioned, they cover off buildings WB03, WB04 and WB05, which are all kind of adjacent to the Empress Place building, Empress State building, and again form a cluster around that building in terms of what will come forward. So not to go into this in too much detail, and again, I think that the fly-through video and the model hopefully will give an overview of this, but just to explain some of the principles that have informed the design evolution of these plots. So these plots have obviously been subject to pre-application discussion where the number of tall buildings within the cluster has been reviewed and reduced overall to the 3 buildings that we've got within the primary cluster, which are those 3 in detail, plus a further building, WB06, which you can see just to the right of the scheme. So that element there in terms of reviewing the clustering of the tall buildings, their relationship with Empress State building, has gone through quite a rigorous testing exercise in terms of townscape, heritage considerations, but also in terms of how the site works as a whole in its own right, both in terms of wind, microclimate, residential amenity for future and existing occupiers, but also really how that cluster serves to really kind of reaffirm the role of Earls Court as a region area and opportunity area within the borough, similar to the other region areas that we have within our control. Can we just go back, John? So the first building, the student accommodation building, similar to, again, some of the other student accommodation buildings that we've recently consented, the floor plate that Catherine mentioned before, they are quite constrained in terms of the floor space and floor plates being regimented for efficiency of form. So what the developer here and the actual design team have done is really taken that kind of quite rigid format and tried to give that some real character through the architecture of the scheme. So again, reaffirming the crown of the building, having that really kind of regress to the top to give the building a real pronounced form when you see it in surrounding townscape views, but also how then the form of the building to ground level beds itself and actually gives a real resident arrival to that space. Again, the detail of the materials and further details of the base to these are suggested through the conditions for the scheme. But at this stage, we have, a significant amount of illustrative material alongside the detailed plans that help us to really reaffirm the quality of that proposal. And again, this just covers off the ground floor of that block, and again, the residential entrance. Now, again, the fly-through that we'll look at the latter end of this presentation should give a feel for how that really grounds itself into the boulevard along Empress Place. So the second building where we've got detailed proposals for is WB04, which is the landmark building. Now, again, the model here and the detailed model that you can see on the right here shows the grounding of that, a residential ground floor onto the boulevard, but also to address the table park. Again, this has been subject to substantive design revision and consideration by numerous design review panels. The form of the building and roads at the top really to kind of give this kind of Art Deco-esque format to the building that really kind of creates a landmark to the development. And we'll see that in some of the townscape views as we go forward. But one of the key things in terms of the format of the building and what's called the petal form serves to provide, a meaningful breaking up of the form of the building rather than a purely kind of square or rectangular form. It's something that's got quite a lot of interest in it. And the detail within the glazing at the upper floors to resident kind of sky gardens, and then the details that come down to ground in the tubular metal elements are considered and are hopefully trying to bring forward what the architect refers to as kind of a waterfall appearance to the scheme. So again, we feel this is something quite unique for the scheme in the borough, and again, something that we can control some of the detail of that through the 1 to 20 details and materials, although there are some illustrative elements here. So again, we do feel that this is, from the testing we've undertaken, quite a high quality building that, does serve to provide a landmark to the Earls Court development overall. Go forward, John. So both of those two buildings share a common podium, which again is addressed through the cascades that sit as part of the landscape proposals. Now, again, the fly-through will show some detail of how that animates the street, but also really anchors the scheme within the master plan as a whole. And again, we consider this adds to the quality of the development for this initial phase of the development, really. So the final detail phase is the two blocks, which are WBO5, which are the affordable housing blocks. Now, again, the scale of these is quite well considered, given the fact that these form the interface with the existing housing estate to really provide a transition from the marker building down to, these more kind of scaled down developments leading into the estates. Again, the details of materials and base to these are again subject to material, but the illustrative material that we've seen so far, and particularly as exemplified in the model on the left-hand side, really high quality scheme coming forward, again, that maximises aspect for future residents, external amenity, but also serves to kind of anchor this back into the estate and the development when considered as a whole. And just as Catherine has mentioned, this just relates to, again, how those elements of the scheme in terms of the podium, the tall buildings, and particularly the two affordable blocks have external spaces linked to them for the enjoyment of future residents and obviously to animate the public realm. And again, this is just for WBO5. So this is the internal courtyard arrangement that sits to the rear of those sites. And again, just giving an illustrative view as to how that would look in future, really. Okay, so as I mentioned before, just in terms of going through this, so the two diagrams are quite similar, but they're actually quite meaningful in terms of what the actual parameter plan suggests as the maximum development proposal that come forward in terms of the horizontal and vertical deviations of the scheme. And again, the second element is what the illustrative master plan looks to provide in terms of those individual plots, which is what's provided on the model here. Just to clarify, as we go forward in terms of some of the visuals that you'll see in terms of wireframes, they are just based on the overall parameters. And again, they're subject to further discussion as future RMA submissions. Okay, so again, the design code, as I mentioned before, covers off a number of the character areas, which also are reaffirmed through the landscape character areas. Now, I won't dwell on this specifically. Again, I think you'll see an overview of those as we go through the fly through of the scheme. But realistically, the table, cascades and Aysgill Gardens, particularly in the phase one of the scheme, are quite important in terms of providing accessible public spaces to local residents and future residents of the scheme, particularly the detailed components. Now, these elements have been subject to significant review because, as John mentioned before, because of the table and retained structure, providing kind of an 8-metre level difference between Aysgill Gardens, and the cascades have been designed quite carefully to ensure that they are designed inclusively, but also designed to provide landscape features that enable both elements to be read in the round as, as really positive parts of the heart of the scheme. And again, the latter phases towards the north of the site, Lilyside Inn Square would include, you know, a new formalised public space. And number 6, adjacent to West Kensington Station, would be potentially a new public space that will provide a new entrance to the station, but also kind of enhancement to North End Road at that aspect. That would depend upon demolition of the existing buildings on the corner of Beaumont Avenue, but fundamentally kind of draw the whole thing together in terms of the landscape principles underpinning the scheme. So again, we'll just go through these quite quickly. The slide through should give a bit more, hopefully, understanding of this. So this is a view from Empress Place at the junction with Lily Road, so just to the south of the site here. And this shows the entrance to Empress Place, but also to the boulevard that connects from the north to south from the scheme in its entirety. And this is more of the kind of pedestrian-focused element of the scheme, but also has the front doors to the detailed plots that we've just talked to. Sorry, I'm just waiting for this to catch up. So this is a view further forward, which covers off, again, on the left-hand side of the detailed plots we've just talked to at the common podium. On the right-hand side is the retained table, with some pavilion details in terms of the commercial units that will front onto the eastern side of Empress Place. This then covers off the table park, which again would sit above the retained structure of the table. A significant portion of this is within RBKC, but again would be publicly accessible at all times to future residents and existing residents within our borough as well. And then this is the detail of the cascade that I've just mentioned. So the block on the right-hand side of the image is one of the affordable housing blocks that then draw into Aysgill Gardens. Now, that will, again, provide a number of different aspects as to how people can access up to the table through, you know, quite innovative water features that hopefully will help to make this into a real destination for people to visit and enjoy as local residents. And this is then the view coming in from the existing housing estate. So this is the new Aysgill Gardens play space and amenity space that sits on the western periphery of the site. Again, this will draw then into those other features, and hopefully you'll see a bit more of that when we go into the fly through in a second. And then this is an earlier illustration just as to how the Lilyside Inn Square could come forward. So again, quite a big space that forms part of the boulevard, but also forms a significant public space for functions and events and food and retail. So on the right-hand side here, you see part of the retained structure of the current depot land. So the current depot facades will potentially be retained with building above them internally. New developments on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side of the image, adjacent to the existing estate, and then to the north, new developments, again, addressing West Cromwell Avenue. And again, this is just taking us up to the northern extent of the site in the next image, just to show, so it's going really slow. So this just shows, again, when you're coming from North End Road, the aspect with Beaumont Avenue, really kind of the look and feel of how the scheme could be developed in that instance. So again, the boulevard here has got a slightly different look and feel because of the fact there's more vehicular traffic in this aspect of the site. But again, hopefully shows that there is a slightly different character, albeit that it's all connected through the different parts of the master plan. Okay, so I'll leave it there with those images and say that the fly through at the end should hopefully give a kind of an overview of bringing that all together. So in terms of the actual heritage and townscape impacts of the scheme, again, these have been through quite rigorous testing with the applicant and through submission of the environmental statement and also the built heritage townscape and visual impact assessment, which is a significant document in its own right. What that considers the impact on changes to significance of surrounding heritage assets and townscape receptors around a 3-kilometre distance to the site. So quite a lot that takes on from the river corridor through to heritage assets in our own borough and also in RBKC and beyond. That assesses what the harm would be in terms of townscape and the heritage assets through a series of views. Now, overall, the degree of harm that we attributed from that assessment, both from the applicant side and then from our independent review, is that there would be less than substantial harm in terms of the heritage tests to 17 assets across both boroughs. So that is 5 assets within our borough and 12 assets within our RBKC. So section 12.172, in terms that there are 2 tables there that kind of provide a summary of those harmful attributes of the scheme and a detailed discussion of each element. So I'm not going to go through those in turn, but I'm just going to go through some of the kind of townscape views that inform those conclusions, really. Okay, so firstly, just a series of views within our borough. So overall, the scheme would have limited impact upon designated heritage assets, i.e. statutory listed buildings. So the key one here is All Saints Church, just north of Putney Bridge, where you can see the church spire here in the centre of the image. If we just go forward, John. So the proposal, you can just see it on the image, but to the left-hand side of the image, there are a series of kinetic views within the assessment, but this is the most harmful one, where the silhouette of the taller building would actually read behind that building and therefore cause some harm to the setting of that asset. But again, we're just putting this in just to show the worst case of where that harm would come to. The second one then is Olympia and Avonmore Conservation Area. So this is a view from Mornington Avenue, looking north. So you've got the existing Ashfield House development to the north of the site, which is occupied just north of Beaumont Avenue and West Cromwell Road. If we go forward. So this is again based on the maximum parameters that come forward. So this is the northern extent, you can see on the scheme, without any detail from the illustrative scheme or the future reserve matters, but again, that there is considered to be harm to the setting of these assets through the introduction of these background features. In part, that harm potentially could be diminished again because of the fact of the demolition of the existing building, which makes quite a neutral support contribution, again, through the reserve matters, where we'd hopefully have more control over the detailed design and quality of those elements of the scheme. The next one again is from Barons Court Conservation Area. So this is a view looking west towards RPKC, along Talgarth Road and then along West Cromwell Road. So again, you can see the existing Ashfield House in the background of that view. Quite a dominant and, again, neutral to negative feature overall as it stands. And again, this shows the maximum parameters of the proposal at that upper end of the scheme, as you can see on the model here. So again, future reserve matters applications and finessing of the massing and architectural appearance hopefully should help to diminish the extent of harm, but we have concluded that obviously that will be harmful to the setting of the conservation area. And similarly, this view from Palliser Road, so this is the existing view where you can see the existing terraces and mansion blocks, in quite a pronounced way, so without anything terminating the extent of that view. And again, this covers off the extent of what the proposal will be brought forward. So again, there will be some harm to the setting of these assets, but again, the reserve matters should help to manage that process in future. Okay, so the next one is Queen's Club Gardens Conservation Area. So this is a private view within the Queen's Club itself. As you can see, the existing buildings that sit on the periphery of the edge of the Queen's Club are here with the Emperor State Building that you can just see in the background. The next image is a cumulative image that shows the proposals, including the detailed components and the outline. But I think what's quite important in this view is the actual building to the left-hand side of the image, which is 100 Cromwell Road, which is in RBKC, but a scheme that's currently being implemented. So again, we consider that the tall building would have some harm in this setting. Again, that's less than substantial harm. And again, this is the same conservation area just from Greyhound Road. So again, you can see the existing 2-storey predominant terraced environment with the church spire prominent on the left-hand side of the image. And again, these are the background features that will be introduced through both the detailed plots and the future reserve matters plots. And again, this is the same view in the evening, just to show how the landmark building particularly will be perceived within that localized view. Sorry, John, can we just go back to that for a second? So I think it's just important, again, alongside the heritage harm that we've designated, we also do deem from a townscape perspective that the landmark building is positive in some ways in terms of providing a wayfinding and legibility device to actually enable local residents to, you know, earmark where Earls Court is, but particularly those key public spaces that we're looking to provide through the scheme as well. The next one, sorry, is just one for consideration. This is Central Fulham Conservation Area when it loads up. So you can see in this view, this again a view taken in the winter, but it's just one that's quite important. So you see in the centre of the view, Empress State Building sitting there in the background of the view. If we just flip forward, John. So the taller building would sit to the right of that. Now again, even with the trees not in leaf, you struggle to see that building, you know, in terms of that context. So again, in the summertime, the impact on that view will be quite limited. There are other views, obviously, as a series of kinetic views where you may see more of the scheme. But again, from a townscape perspective, we think that's a positive to actually identify and provide kind of a, you know, a wayfinding feature for residents to arrive at Earls Court. The next one, and this one is again from our borough, is the Mile Conservation Area and Thames Path. So again, this is the existing situation. And this is the proposed as the building comes forward. So again, the Empress State Building, Charing Cross Hospital and the Arc are quite important background features of these views. They don't overly compete with the foreground features of the conservation area, which are quite prominent in their own right. But again, the new buildings are acknowledged to introduce more buildings in a cluster that obviously would result in some minor harm in terms of the conservation area test. But again, in terms of providing that wayfinding to Earls Court from a townscape perspective, there are some positive attributes towards that in terms of benefits. And sorry, just again, this is the same view, just of an evening view, as to, you know, to how you perceive that. Again, the kind of beacon at the top of the tall building may be subject to some lighting array that, you know, again, would give some wayfinding to the site, and obviously, hopefully some of the kind of key uses and real venues that will come forward on the site. Okay, so this is just a snapshot of the views again within some of the assets within RBKC and adjacent boroughs. So again, I'm not going to dwell on these, but I'm just going to go through these just quite quickly just to explain the kind of headings and the outcomes of the table. So the key element of harm really that comes through for RBKC and obviously for Historic England is really the impacts on Brompton Cemetery. Now, there are a number of views that have been assessed as part of the Built Heritage Townscape Visual Impact Assessment. These views particularly around the central avenue of Brompton Cemetery. So we'll just talk through those and just go through them individually. So this is a view from the northern extent of Brompton Cemetery, again, without the development in play. And then the next one shows the development in situ. So in this view, as you can see, even with the trees not in leaf, a significant portion of the development isn't really noticeable in this portion of the view. There are other buildings, obviously, that have been delivered earlier on as part of development in the borough that are forming background features of those views. The next view is taken slightly further south. So this again is a view from the Central Avenue. And again, this is the view that there are particular concerns about in terms of the actual less than substantial harm in terms of the introduction of that new cluster. Again, it's worthwhile noting that some of that harm has already been brought forward through implementation of the 100 Cromwell Road scheme, but that harm again is less than substantial harm in terms of the MPPF test. And similarly, a final view further south, just to show again how that primary cluster of tall buildings, both within our borough and RBKC, would impact upon these views, and obviously the degree of heritage harm that would cause. Okay. Again, just to go through, this is a view from Bill Beach Conservation Area in RBKC. So this is the crescents that sit to the east of the development site, where you've got the church at the moment, obviously unimpeded. So the proposals, particularly the tall buildings within our side of the borough, the landmark building and the other buildings to the east, would also obviously have some impact there as well. And similarly, this is the same view from an alternative perspective. It's fine. Okay, fine. Next one. And sorry, again, these are just some other views within RBKC, just to give a flavour of, again, the fact that Emperor State is quite prominent in some of these views. The cluster of tall buildings would add that prominence in these views overall. Next one. Great. Okay, and then just finally, this is a view from Kensington Gardens, just to show again the impact from other aspects from wider townscape perspective. And again, as you can see within these types of views, there are already tall buildings occupying the background of the views from this location. And again, as we talked about from a heritage perspective, there are some harmful elements, but also from a townscape perspective, there are some positives in terms of providing wayfinding to the borough, but also to the Earls Court site as well from this perspective, really. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, I just want to pick up very quickly on the consultation that's been carried out, and just a sort of summary of the sort of representations that have been received. So, as I pointed out at the beginning of the presentation, the local planning authority have carried out 2 consultations. One was at the beginning of September 2024, and one was at the September this year. So the comments received are all summarised in the committee report. But so I just brought up some key features. So in total, this was at the time when the report was published. We received 376 individual representations. So this doesn't include the comments received from the consultees or the amenity groups and societies. So we've broken those down into that. Of the 376, 76 opposed the proposed development, 282 were in support, and 33 were neutral, neither objecting or supporting. We've done an analysis of those representations, where they come from, in terms of the 376, 209 are from residents in our borough. Again, the key feature here that 51 were objecting, 136 in support, and 22 were neutral. Across RBKC, we've received 122 representations, 22 objection, 89 in support, and 11 neutral. We've also received representations further afield, either in London or elsewhere in the UK. We've received in total 45 representations, 44 of those were in support. We've also received, during the course of the last couple of weeks, quite a lot of pro formas, mostly in support of the application. I think a lot of the people that have written in are users of the current Earls Court Community Hub. Again, 73 in support. There were 2 objections and 18 neutral. As pointed out in the addendum, we've received further representations during the course of the last week, 15 from local residents. So that brings the total number of representations from neighbours to 391. This just gives you a snapshot of where the representations are coming from. The green dots are those in support, the red are objection, and then grey neutral. So as you can see, they're quite widely spread. Within vicinity of the site, there are quite a lot of representations in support. And this is just, again, a very quick image just showing an overlay of where the representations have come in from wider London. As pointed out, we've also received a number of representations from the amenity societies and some residents groups. They are all predominantly opposed to the application. The key elements are points that have come across from the amenity groups and societies, and also those local residents that were written in objecting, have been about the scale, the height and density of the development, about the design, the character and impact on local heritage. Some residents have questioned that there isn't enough housing, or there isn't enough affordable housing being provided. Some residents have questioned the commercial element, why we need more office space. There have been some concerns raised about residential amenity with regard particularly about impacts on noise, dust through the construction works. In terms of traffic, transport and accessibility, we've received obviously objections relating to the perceived impact of the scheme in terms of traffic on the local roads and in terms of impacts on parking. It should be pointed out that this is a car light development, so the provision of car parking within the development is limited to only essential parking. There's also been objections relating to infrastructure, services and public realm, and relating to the impact that the development will have on the local community. All of these concerns have been assessed through the body of the report. They're also all summarised within the conclusion and the section relating to the wider public benefits against the harms that have been listed in the report, as Alan's pointed out, potential heritage harms. But the council's overview is that the wider benefits outweigh the harm that have been identified. And for this reason, officers are recommending that to committee that planning permission should be granted, subject to the conditions and the completion of a satisfactory Section 106 legal agreement. The heads of terms are listed in Section 19 of the report, plus the addendum. And the resolution, subject to being approved by committee, would require that the application is then referred to the Mayor of London for a final decision and to notify the Secretary of State.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation and for the detailed slides and visualizations. Alan, do you have?
Yes, Councillor, sorry, I was just going to say we've got the video lined up so we can put that on now. So I think just again, as John said, I think that the video hopefully will draw the discussion together just to obviously show kind of what we consider to be the high quality of the scheme, both in terms of the detail and the outline components. Obviously, with the outline components, it's just worthwhile to say that that is all illustrative material. So obviously there will be further opportunity to review those detailed plots as we go forward, but hopefully it will give a flavour as to everything that we've covered off in the presentation.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. Is there anything else from officers? No, well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for your contributions. In that case, we'll move to speakers. Just to clarify, because of the complexity of the application and for the benefit of all members, I have agreed to allow extra time for speakers. We have not received any objectors who want to speak, but we do have the applicant, and you will have 10 minutes to speak. So if you'd like to approach the top table. And whenever you're ready, just make sure the microphone is on and that you introduce yourselves when you start.
Hi, is that working? Yeah. Hi, good evening, councillors. I'm Rob Heasman, Chief Executive of the Earls Court Development Company. We're delighted to be here and proud to say we're a company based in Hammersmith and Fulham, a borough where ambition and community go hand in hand. Even before construction has begun, our work has already generated over £50 million of local economic benefit and supported over 1,000 residents into jobs or training. That is the foundation we are building on. For more than 150 years, Earls Court has been the place that big ideas take shape. But after a decade of dereliction and having rescued this distressed site, our intention is very simple: to put Earls Court firmly back on the map as one of London's great places. Our comprehensive master plan will deliver 4,000 homes and 12,000 jobs, the majority of which will be delivered in Hammersmith and Fulham. We're creating a new neighbourhood based around sustainability, innovation, culture and community. From the outset, we chose to do things differently. We took time to listen and understand the needs of the city, your residents and the communities now and in the future. After 4 years of extensive engagement, our plans have evolved and they've strengthened. We are encouraged that your own consultation that was demonstrated tonight has shown clear support, with over 70% of respondents in favour of the ambition of Earls Court. We're committed to be a long-term partner in delivering the borough's industrial strategy and your upstream vision. The benefits are significant: new homes, including affordable homes, new jobs and training pathways, support for existing businesses, increased footfall for local high streets such as North End Road, and sustained investment that strengthens your communities. We strive for the very best in city making, addressing the housing crisis, strengthening climate resilience and unlocking economic opportunity, and restoring Earls Court as an iconic global destination. We're ready to deliver our submitted detailed designs for the first phase, and we intend to get on site swiftly, delivering high quality homes across a range of tenures. Your decision tonight, of course, is an important milestone in a collaborative journey, one rooted in partnership with this borough and its residents. I'd now like to hand over to my Head of Design, Sharon Giffen, who will speak in more detail about our vision and how it will deliver for the communities you represent.
Thank you, Rob. It is a privilege to be leading on the design vision for Earls Court. For this place means a lot to me. It's part of my own life story. Earls Court has always been a place that has welcomed and given people opportunity. Like my parents, who arrived here from Colombia and Ireland, two troubled countries in the 1970s. They met in Earls Court, they fell in love, and they settled here. And they used to frequent the shops and cafes in North End Road, and they made friends at the Irish Centre just down the road here in Hammersmith. This place gave them the start they needed to make a better life for themselves and my family here in this country. And welcoming and giving opportunity to future generations and families like mine is what is at the heart of our aspirations. As Rob says, we've already started doing exactly that. We've welcomed over 1 million people to site through our programme of culture, sports and community activations, and thousands of people have attended our events. We're a small team that have been based on site for over 5 years, and we're all passionate about working collaboratively and genuinely with local people. And I and the rest of the team have got to know hundreds of residents, business owners, and people who have all been interested in shaping our proposals. And engagement has genuinely made our master plan better. We have learnt so much along the way. We have reached out to over 200,000 people, including invites to workshops and events where our design team have attended and listened and responded to key themes discussed. Our plans have been shaped by your talented team of officers, by ward councillors, by design review panels, by amenity groups, by residents, and by business groups. And we've learnt 3 key things along the way: the priorities that people want to see for this site, the need to create a resilient plan for the future, and the wish for high-quality buildings and spaces that are inclusive for everyone. So what do people want to see here at Earls Court? We heard time and time again the need for open space, for homes, for jobs, for nature. And the result is a master plan that opens up this space and dedicates over half the site to public open space, responding to the top priority we heard from many people. A place that will come alive again with arts, entertainment and music, and will deliver much needed homes for Londoners and offer local residents. And innovative workspace that will embed upstream London, all around a network of generous exhibition gardens and a 4.5-acre urban park at its heart. The second thing we heard is the responsibility of designing for the future, to make this a resilient and climate-proof new piece of city. The site will pioneer new technologies, such as our low-carbon, low-energy network of heat sharing. It will set a benchmark here in Hammersmith and Fulham, which other urban regeneration schemes around the world will look to emulate. For we will be the home for climate innovation, and it will form the cornerstone of our approach. But sustainability is not just about the environment. We have a clear focus on social and economic sustainability as well, ensuring that the work we do now and in the future will create inclusive growth, provide opportunities for existing communities, and deliver positive impacts over the long term. And thirdly, people want us to create high-quality spaces for everyone. And so, with our award-winning Public Realm Inclusivity Panel, the PRIP, we have created a new benchmark for inclusive public space in London. For the very first time, communities will be connected across this site, and 3 stations will be connected through an accessible and welcoming landscape planted with over 1,000 trees. A landscape that includes the best play space in West London that you saw in the video, and an amazing new cultural square in front of the train shed. This all comes together through our nationally recognised design code, which has been created so closely with your officers, the PRIP, and local residents. And this will provide you with the certainty that what you're getting tonight will be delivered in the long term. And finally, we've ensured exceptionally designed buildings and spaces by using globally renowned architects and landscape designers. For example, the first affordable homes in Hammersmith and Fulham have been designed by Stirling Prize-winning architects, and they include a new community hub, which has followed the success of our existing space. This demonstrates our commitment to bringing the highest care and quality to every part of this 44-acre site. To conclude, we will deliver upstream London through innovation, education, outreach, employment, and innovative housing models. We will provide local residents, young people and business with the support they need to thrive. And it will be embedded throughout this master plan and will be the next chapter of the success story of this innovative borough. Our ambition is that many families, like my own, will begin their stories and enjoy the opportunities that I have here in Earls Court. Thank you. And I'd like now to introduce Neve, who's one of our local residents and a member of our Public Inclusivity Panel.
Hello, my name is Neve, and I got involved with the PRIP via my youth club 4 years ago and have been involved in so many stages of planning, from physically designing the spaces to editing the design codes. As a local resident who's grown up in West Kensington, it's been wonderful to see the genuine community co-production that has been at the heart of the project. I've witnessed how the plans have changed to be more youth-friendly and sociable, as well as being inclusive and accessible for all. As a young person who grew up on the PRIP, I joined when I was 14 and I'm now 18. A lot has changed over the years. Most significantly, I think that this project has proved to me that it's possible for young voices to be taken seriously and can advocate for ourselves when we're given the spaces to do so, which is really important for youth work more generally, but also to boost the confidence of young people, especially as we're growing up to inhabit these spaces. And we're going to be the most affected by the decisions that are made now. This process has also changed my perspective on the value of intergenerational conversations and relationships, and learning about the experiences of neurodivergent, disabled, and older people through the exploration of designs in these plans. The project team have truly listened to what matters to PRIP members, taking our concerns seriously and working with us to find the best solution. So I'm pleased to give my support to their plans for Earls Court. Thank you.
Thank you, Niamh. I'm Emma Dandy, the Head of Planning at ECDC, and I'm here to wrap up and field any questions that you may have in due course. We also have a few members of our experienced and very knowledgeable team if there are any technical queries. The application before you this evening is the result of 5 years of collaborative work, a proposal which can deliver 2,500 homes, of which over 800 will be affordable, alongside 9,000 jobs. We passionately believe our proposals represent the very best possible development that will create an incredible future for this part of the borough. This is a deliverable plan backed by long-term stewardship, and we do hope that you will feel able to resolve to grant planning permission this evening. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind, we'll have 2 more speakers. If you wouldn't mind just taking your seats back in the general gallery. Thank you very much. And I'd also now like to welcome Councillor Florence Chevot-Verde to come and speak, who is the Ward Councillor for West Kensington. And Councillor, you have unlimited time, but we would appreciate it if you could keep it brief.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Florian. I speak to you as one of the local ward councillors, having had the pleasure of serving West Kensington since 2022. And as a former vice chair of the planning committee, also having had the pleasure of serving alongside some of you tonight and some of your predecessors for 4 years. Now, before we proceed, let's remember the overwhelming majority of the site firmly sits in West Kensington. So if we were being precise, this should really be called the West Kensington Master Plan. I say that not to crack a joke, but to remind us that tonight we are discussing our community, our streets and our people. I want to begin my contribution tonight by paying tribute to Charlie Trologan, a pillar of West Kensington and Gibbs Green and a true exemplar of public service. Born in Fulham in September 1924, Charlie volunteered for the Royal Navy when he was just old enough. He served on HMS Rodney and later HMS Victorious, taking part in the Allied operations against the Tirpitz, and was in Tokyo Bay on the 2nd of September 1945 during the Japanese surrender. After the war, he helped repatriate Allied prisoners of war, retired in 1947, became a black cab driver whilst raising a family, and was elected to represent Gibbs Green in July 1997. He became deputy mayor in 2002 and mayor from 2003 to 2006. Even after losing his seat, he fought tirelessly and with meticulous record keeping to save the West Kensington and Gibbs Green estates from demolition. Charlie died on the 20th of September 2024, and on that day, the flags flew at half-mast over our town hall as a mark of the borough's respect for a man who gave so much to Hammersmith and Fulham and to our country. Now, turning to the more recent history of this area, the story takes a dramatic shift. In 2006, the Conservative Party took control of Hammersmith and Fulham Council and began selling off council homes. In April 2013, they signed a deal to sell Gibbs Green and West Kensington Estates to Capco, completing the transfer by November that year. 750 homes were sold for around 105 million, far below their true value, and residents were left out of proper consultation. My thanks and tributes tonight go to the valiant local residents who year after year stood firm and fought to save their homes and their community from demolition. Their resilience and determination have safeguarded the very heart of West Kensington and Gibbs Green for future generations, and without them, none of us would be here tonight. Labour returned to power in May 2014, committed to restoring justice. In November 2019, we bought these estates back for the same 105 million, and since then, we already invested 2.5 million over 5 years in upgrading landscaping, play areas, lighting and communal spaces, each genuinely shaped by residents' input. In February 2025, the Council approved its 2025-29 capital programme, allocating over 12 million to a major works package to refurbish the estates, and the programme concluded this year. Now, as we consider this West Kensington master plan, we must ensure Charlie's legacy is honoured. We saved these estates once, we must now secure their future. Therefore, may I ask you, distinguished members, to ensure that your scrutiny of this application follows the following points. Ensure that the Gibbs Green and West Kensington estate will remain secure, that their residents will be able to continue to live here. Ensure that the construction management plan prevents local streets from being overwhelmed by side traffic. Check that there are clear and funded plans to support local infrastructure, schools and other public services as we deliver thousands of new homes. Seek clarity on how local residents will qualify for the vast amount of affordable housing and whether local people will be given priority. Review how servicing and delivery routes will be managed so that residential roads are not congested. Examine what measures are in place to control noise and disruption during construction. Require commitment for continuous engagements between the developer and residents throughout all phases of the project. In conclusion, venerable members, your decision will shape West Kensington and our borough for generations. And like Charlie and the Save Our Estates campaigners, you hold in your hands the power to write a huge chapter in our city's history. Please scrutinise every inch of this proposal and take the time you need to get it right, but not so much time that France passes its next budget before we finish. We have already shown what this administration can achieve by saving these estates and investing in their future. Now I call on you to ensure this development strengthens our borough, protects our communities, and honours the legacy of its champions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And we also have Councillor Darrell Brown, also Ward Councillor for West Kensington. Councillor, you also have unlimited time. Same rules apply.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee and community representatives. Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Councillor Darrell Brown from the West Ken ward, and I've been a councillor there for 16 years. And I'm here to request that this committee carefully considers this application, especially one of this scale and significance. This project represents a major investment in the future of this borough. I believe that their team has worked diligently to ensure it delivers a long-term value while respecting the characters, needs and aspirations of the community. It will provide thousands of new jobs and permanent employment opportunities. Housing include improved public spaces, green areas, etc. ECDC have engaged extensively with residents, neighbourhood groups and key stakeholders. We must all remember one thing. Communities don't stand still. They evolve, and with careful planning, I believe that ECDC will guide that evolution in a way that improves quality of life and strengthens our local economy. Hopefully, it will be an asset we are all proud of, and they continue their positive engagement with all our local residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And now the meeting can start after an hour 42 minutes. We have questions from members of the committee. Who would like to start us off? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chair. I first wanted to ask about the blue badge provision. And obviously, in the report, you commit to a certain number, or sorry, there is a commitment to a certain number of blue badge spaces. Can you identify where on the master plan these are intended to be provided, or is that something you're able to outline at this stage? At the moment, we've got 17 car parking spaces identified within the detailed plots. So they are clearly specified within the layout plans. Obviously, going forward, they will be subject to future reserve matter applications. But overall, there is a number of car parking spaces provided and outlined within the planning submission. Is this something that is, so I appreciate this is a master plan, so it may not be particularly identified, but is this something that can be specifically pointed to on the outline now, or is it just a future commitment, just for my own understanding?
Yeah, Catherine Patterson, Principal Transport Planner at Hammersmith, Fulham. In terms of disabled parking for blue badge holders, the parking will be provided in accordance with the London plan. So there'll be initial 3% for all residential plus some provision for commercial, and there will be a parking management strategy to review demand so that it can be provided up to 10% in accordance with London plan. Because it's an outline, at this point, we have not indicated where those spaces would be, but they would be at grade and in close proximity to building entrances.
Okay, and then in terms of the review, would this happen periodically? Obviously, as you say, this is a long build out. So how often would this be reviewed?
It would be annually, but as part of the parking management process, people who had a need would be able to put themselves forward onto I would imagine a database where there would be either a waiting list or some form of management system where a space can be allocated for them based on. There will always be one-for-one for the disabled residential units within the development, in theory. So, and then there would be also opportunity for blue badge holders who are visiting to park within the site as well.
Okay, thank you. I suppose sticking with yourself in terms of, obviously, as you say, this is still outline phase. In terms of the construction and the logistics, at this stage, have you any indication as to which roads, which site entrances are intended for the first phase of construction?
Yeah, as part of the planning process, the routes have been identified for the detailed component of the application, and the access would be through a service access road accessed from Lily Road. Initially, as part of the initial planning application, it was indicated that Munn Street may be an option, but we as officers resisted that and insisted that the estates wasn't used for construction access. So all construction access for the detailed phase would be from Lily Road. And then as later phases come forward, that it may come forward from Beaumont Avenue, but those details are yet to be agreed.
Okay, and then in terms of the number of vehicles, do you have kind of an estimation of how many extra vehicles you'd expect to be on Lily Road?
It's an estimate at this stage, but it could be up to 200 movements, but that would be in entering and exiting from the site. And obviously there would be a booking system so that any arrivals would have a slot and a duration for unloading, and clearly they would have to avoid the morning and evening peaks, and obviously avoid school and arrival departure times as well.
When you say 200 movements, is that per day, per week?
Per day.
Per day, so up to 200 movements per day.
Up to. At this stage, there's an outline proposal in terms of the outline principles, but there will be subject to more detailed information to be provided as part of, if it got consent, as part of a condition discharge.
And as part of those conditions, would you seek for low and zero emission vehicles to be used?
Absolutely, and also an element of consolidation to try and reduce the number of vehicle movements. We would be expecting low emission vehicles, elements of consolidation. And obviously we would want to ensure that there was not vehicles arriving half loaded and those kind of, so it'd be quite a lot of information we require in terms of ensuring that construction vehicle movements were sustainable.
Thank you. And then, obviously, as identified in the report, this is going to create hopefully a huge number of jobs during the construction phase itself. Are you looking to secure any provision to, where possible, encourage people who are working on site to use active travel or public transport as opposed to adding to the congestion by driving to site here?
Absolutely. As part of the details to be submitted is a construction workers travel plan, which would include measures to support workers arriving by public transport. We've also secured there will be monitoring of those workers to ensure that there is monitoring of how they're arriving at site. Obviously, we also have opportunities to limit parking so they couldn't park on the surrounding streets as well. But yes, there will be a travel plan to monitor construction.
Okay, so these things can be secured by condition.
Yes, we've already secured those measures within the report, plus additional measures in terms of monitoring, so that council officers are able to monitor and ensure that what is being proposed is actually what happens on site as well.
Thank you.
And just one further element, councillor, is just to confirm that as part of the construction conditions, we've also asked for a community liaison group, and that would be set up before works commence on site, so that we can ensure that we take on board any concerns residents may have, be able to reassure them in terms of things like vehicle routing. We'll ensure there's measures in place so they're not construction vehicles not routing down residential streets, etc.
Perfect, thank you. If you'll allow me, Chair, I'd like to turn to the question of the design here. As I think mentioned in the presentation, obviously this does touch on quite a number of conservation areas. And given as we can see very clearly in the display here this evening, this is a very substantial development and is likely to, while the area is generally Victorian, Edwardian in its design, this is going to kind of almost reset the common architecture of the area. Typically, when we've assessed applications previously at committee, where applications have been adjacent to conservation areas, we have given it some weight. To understand better for this evening, in terms of our own judgment, how much should we weigh the impact of these being adjacent to but not part of these conservation areas?
Thank you, Councillor. So I think it's worthwhile just referring members to the concluding sections of the design section, which is on the urban design heritage balance. That's from section 12.207. And hopefully that section quite clearly sets the kind of balance that we as officers have taken as well, both in terms of considering the regeneration area designation of the site, the optimization of the site in terms of London Plan policy, the high quality of design and placemaking, but also acknowledging that there are heritage concerns that we need to take into account. And again, just in terms of the actual conclusion that we reach, section 12.2.14, 12.214 and 12.215 conclude where we get to on that balance in terms of weighting that up against the heritage harm, against the design quality of the scheme placemaking, but also then the final concluding elements of the wider public benefits that we feel overall outweigh that harm in terms of our statutory undertaking.
Yep. Thank you. Chair, I'm going to hand back at this stage for others to ask questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor? Oh, yes, Councillor Kamel.
Thank you. I think, thank you very much, by the way, Chair. Just on going back to the parking.
Councillor, maybe your microphone, if you can have it.
Sorry, just going back onto the parking bit. Catherine, I think you said that your anticipating a 3% parking yield across the site. And in the detailed application, that is a total of 15 for the residential and 2 things, which works out at 3.3%. But according to my calculations, in paragraph 6.41, it says that the population yield is going to be 10,785. And in 4.116, it says that the car parking spaces anticipated is 205. My very rough math on nearly 11,000 people is that that is 330 car parking spaces. And that leaves a shortfall of about 50% on the 205 up to just under 330. But of the 205, can you tell me how many of those are going to be designated as disabled accessible spaces, or what is the current plan? Because it'll be an RMA matter. And can you just confirm that, and I didn't see it, and there were an awful lot of conditions, that all the car parking spaces will be designated to be fast charging spaces as well?
In relation, Councillor, going to your latter question, all the parking spaces within the site will have electric charging facilities. There may be a mixture. It's because of the I'm not sure how the condition is worded. Because fast charging is only may not be essential if you're parking overnight. You don't need the fast charging, so there may be a mixture depending on demand. In terms of the parking provision, it's what is indicative at this stage. Until we have the reserved matters come forward, we're not going to know what the mix of residential units are going to be and quantum. And so that at the moment, the figures are an estimate. The London plan requires 3% initially, and there will be a parking management plan that will bring the provision up to 10% if the demand is there. But because at this stage some of the elements are in outline, it's difficult to give you that answer that you're asking for.
Thank you. Just to clarify, that there is going to be a shortfall on the figures in the agenda on a minimum of 3% parking for the number of residents, though.
Thank you very much. Are there any, Councillor Painter?
On the proposed improvements to the access at the tube stations, West Kensington and Brompton, is there a plan for there to be step-free access as part of the upgrades?
As part of the planning application, TfL, Transport for London, have had input into the assessment, transport assessment for this application, including assessment for capacity of the stations, to ensure there isn't further congestion as a result of the development. And also as part of that process, that there has been identified opportunities to make West Kensington and West Brompton step-free in the future, but that would require further details in terms of the design, but indicatively that is the ambition.
Thank you. Chair, is it possible to ask ECDC to come in further on that point?
Ms. Dandy, perhaps? Yeah. I should clarify that usual practice is that we would not, we would ask the officers and we would hear from the developers, but because of the scale of the application, in cases where officers may not be able to answer the question that we have asked, but for just very quick, brief remarks, we don't necessarily need a full presentation.
Thank you very much. I've got my colleague Justin here, who's from WSP. He was also a registered speaker.
Thank you. And just to clarify, we would have done the same had there been speakers objecting. Since there are no speakers objecting, we will have you answer questions. But yes, please go ahead.
So to clarify the answer to that question, we've been working with TfL along with officers from LBHF and RBKC on a package of mitigation measures for the stations. At West Brompton and West Kensington, the mitigation schemes include step-free access. We as ECDC have agreed a contribution towards that mitigation package.
Thank you very much. Councillor Painter.
Just a further question, and this is directed at officers. Thinking of the proposed development on Munn Street on the former Fulham Boys School site, how do you see that development, which I believe construction is planned to start in 2027, how will that interact with this site?
As part of the application, an outline proposal was submitted in relation to construction, and one of the reasons that officers resisted the use of the estate for construction traffic was being mindful that the school will be located there, which is why our preference and what we indicated to the applicant was to use Lily Road and not to take that construction traffic through there. So in terms of the proposed school, there wouldn't be the same impact because the construction traffic wouldn't be going through the estate. But also, just as further measures, we would envisage that there would be no construction arrivals or departures taking place during school arrival and departure times as well. So there would be no interaction between parents taking their children to school and construction traffic.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nima.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Nima. Is it on this point, Councillor?
It was on the step-free access.
If you'd like to ask that question.
Like, just to save coming back to it later, I noticed that in page 147 of the officer report, where it talks about the PTSP station modelling and indeed the RAG status misuse, it says that TfL notes omitted commentary on step-free access capacity. Modelling showed insufficient lift capacity even in the base case. Platform pressure is understated. Development will worsen congestion both from direct passenger increases and increased through traffic from branches. Now, I should imagine that since the publication of this report, additional discussions have taken place with TfL, and since we are very unusually taking additional information from the applicant, I wondered if we could have some details, because step-free access is actually quite an important component of the impact on the local environment.
I'll let
Catherine in the first instance, and then if there's anything to add.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you, Councillor. I was just going to say that John Sanchez may be more up to date on the most recent correspondence from Transport for London, but just to offer some reassurance that TfL have been involved in this application process for a couple of years now, from pre-app through to the application stage. And there has been significant assessment undertaken on the stations and their capacity. And as part of that process, measures have been identified to alleviate some of the congestion at stations, including the provision of step-free Perhaps John can provide some commentary on the latest input we've had from Transport for London, because obviously they're stakeholder for the stations.
Yes, as Catherine's pointed out, there's been ongoing dialogue with Transport for London, with both boroughs and also the applicant in terms of addressing points and concerns, particularly around the potential impacts on the stations. The last correspondence that we had from Transport for London was on the 7th of November, and they've obviously carried out an impact assessment exercise, including the pedestrian simulation modelling for each stations, and this was signed off fit for purpose by TfL. So on that basis, subject to mitigating or carrying out the interventions that are proposed at both West Brompton and West Kensington, and this is not only through step free access, but enhancements to the stations themselves in terms of the gate lines and ticket halls and stairways and walkways. The last response that we received from TfL that they were supportive of the proposals, subject obviously towards the financial contributions that have been secured towards works to both these stations.
Thank you, John. If you have something to add.
Sure. I just wanted to add that, yeah, in terms, responding directly to the point about the RAG assessment that was presented in our transport assessment at the point of submission. Post-application, we had discussions with Transport for London, and they reviewed all of the modelling that we had undertaken, and all of that modelling has now been signed off. So we reached a position of agreement in terms of the modelling that we presented in the planning application. Subsequent to that, we then went through a process of developing what we call station option studies, which is early stage feasibility for the mitigation package that we put forward. And that mitigation package seeks to address the impacts of the development and deliver step-free access at both West Kensington and West Brompton. And it's that those mitigation proposals that we are seeking to provide a contribution towards.
Thank you, Councillor Kamel.
Thank
follow up on this.
Yeah. Exactly on this, that particular thing. And indeed, on page 147 under subsection 5, it actually says RAG status misuse. TfL objects to the use of RAG scoring for mitigation designs, especially where the LOSE is deemed acceptable despite substandard widths. How did you, since you say that you've now come to agreement, how did you manage to jump the shark on this one?
So the specific reference there is relating to the how we assessed the dimensions that are available within the station against TfL's design standards. So you appreciate that the stations, in some instances, can be up to 150 years old, and they don't necessarily comply with modern design standards. And the point that TfL are making is that our application of applying modern design standards to, historic stations which don't necessarily comply with those standards is perhaps not appropriate, and that therefore they wanted us to focus on what's called the LOS, which is the level of service, which is the performance of the station within the micro simulation modelling that was referred to.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nemo. Sorry, back to you. And if you wouldn't mind just going back to the, sorry to have to get you back and forth, but I'm just conscious we don't want this to become Q&A between the councillors and the ECDC. It's only if we really need to clarify something. It's been a big development and lots has happened in the last week. Councillor Nemo.
Thank you. A few questions on a few different points. First of all, on the upstream London industrial strategy, I'll just remind the Chief Executive of ECDC it's upstream London, not just upstream. But I was wondering if officers could potentially speak a bit more to that, because the language in the report's slightly vague on page 422. It sort of describes upstream London ambitions, developer participation in the pathway bond. I just wondered if we could speak a bit more to how this development aligns with that, please.
Certainly, pardon me. The mix of uses has been arrived at with the intention of maximising the employment benefits of the proposal, to create innovation clusters as identified in the proposals, which also aligns with both local and regional planning policy to encourage these employment sectors to thrive in particular designated locations. A package has been put together to provide enhancements to this in terms of enabling apprenticing, pathway bonds, and the delivery of an incubator space to enable the small and emerging businesses and technologies to develop, which aligns with the aspirations to generate economic growth, employment growth locally, and spread the benefits of that amongst the local communities. I don't know if managers want to come in on those. We have heads of terms are drafted to try and secure those benefits with as much certainty as possible. There will also be affordable workspace within the employment areas, although there are several options currently available, which the council is currently considering.
No, thank you for that. Do you want to come in or?
Matt Burt, Assistant Director of Development Management, through the chair. It's obviously challenging in the first instance because this is, a clear derelict large site. So what has been a major benefit and what we've managed to negotiate with ECDC is the provision of the incubator scale-up space as phase one. So we'll be coming early in the development phase, and that's for a minimum period of 10 years. So that's going to give a big advantage to the scheme in terms of achieving those corporate priorities around encouraging startup space, encouraging innovative businesses to come to this location, and obviously feed off the great stuff that's happening up in White City as well, given the proximity. So we believe that through the criteria we're established within the 106 around this scale space, it will certainly facilitate the sort of startup and tech innovative businesses that are being attracted at the moment to the space in Imperial College's South Campus. And this is what we're seeking to replicate within this location. This should give us a really good start at doing this early in the development phases that will then bleed through into the remaining phases and have a permanent presence there and give us that additional head start to really make it meaningful in this development.
Thank you very much for the explanation. I wonder, sort of off that as well, with regards to local talent, is there any sort of provision in the sort of report as it is on how much of the sort of employees or staff have to be local?
Yes, within the draft heads of terms, there are apprenticeships and local skills requirements and local procurement targets as well.
Sorry, I can also add that there's also a target within the heads of terms that for at least 20% of the total number of people for the end users to be employed by H&F residents.
Great, thank you very much. I want to turn to some of the points that Councillor Shopverdi made in his earlier speech. So one of them is on demand for local services in the immediate vicinity. So obviously there's, this is a big development, going to bring in sort of thousands of people who don't currently live in the borough to live in the borough. I wonder, in terms of, Section 106 or what's in the plan to make sure sort of existing doctor surgeries, pharmacies, services that we all rely on aren't stretched or put under sort of further pressure when in 20 years' time we have sort of thousands of more residents in the borough.
If we're talking about specifically the doctor's surgeries, there is provision long term for potentially a medical facility to be provided on site. Within the early phases, potentially there is scope for the impact to be addressed via the existing surgeries, or we're subject to them obviously carrying out improvements to their existing facilities. I think the knock-on effect will come in long term with regard to the latter phases coming forward.
But when you say sort of potentially, does that mean there's a world where we don't secure these further facilities and things do come under pressure?
If I could just add that in response to NHS consultation responses, there have been financial contributions secured specifically towards primary care, which in the region of £400,000 for the first phase, and then a potentially up to 3.5 million across the later phases to offset any impact on local residents. There's also a contribution towards education locally to accommodate the any child yield arising from the development.
Through the chair, thank you. Yeah, in short, I think the answer is the framework is there as we move forward. I mean, there are minimums and maximums, but there's uncertainty as to how they play out in the long term, especially over 20 years. So that we've concentrated on sort of mitigating the scheme that we know about now and putting measures in place to establish what will happen as it becomes clear what's coming forward in the later phases. So with specific regard to education, for example, clearly the more houses you build, the more demand is going to increase. So, you know, the one thing feeds the other. So for now, it's a matter of having those building blocks in and those points of reference that we can revisit as and when things start to become clearer.
Yeah, thank you for those answers. Just one final thing I'd like to touch on, has sort of been touched on, potentially parking, but I'm worried about some of the traffic. So obviously there's, you know, broadly few, you know, cars aren't really factored too much into the development as things are, and rightly so. But I wonder what's what's the sort of traffic modelling saying about places like Askill Avenue, sort of on the West Kent and Gibbs Green estates? Would there be a potential for there to be excessive congestion? What sort of models have been run? Again, I'm thinking in sort of 20 years' time, so it's maybe a bit early to tell. But yeah, yeah, wondering what you have to speak to with regards to that.
There isn't going to be any vehicular access through the Gibbs Green estate. So on that basis, there wasn't any modelling done of those around the estate. But what we did secure, because although there is no, apart from emergency vehicle access, there is no vehicular access from the estate. We've also secured through a monitor and manage process that if there's contributions towards traffic reduction, so we can introduce measures if there is any kind of informal activity that is generated that was not envisaged. But because there's no vehicular access, we don't expect there to be any additional traffic through the estate, and that's why it wasn't modelled.
Like, I guess on that, there's obviously Ubers, there's delivery drivers, all this sort of thing. The people, yeah, it seems somewhat of an oversight to not factor that in.
The assumption is there's a dedicated service access road that comes in from Lily Road, and the assumption is, and there is in addition there is a delivery and servicing strategy for the site, which is encourages all deliveries to come through the dedicated service access road, and we envisage that's where they're going to take place. But just as an additional element in terms of monitoring and managing, we have secured financial contributions so the council can introduce further controls if there was any of that activity to take place. So we have considered that as part of the assessment.
Can I hone in on that point about deliveries? I mean, maybe in 20 years' time, it'll be delivered by a drone through our windows. But is there, I understand what you're saying about the access route, but thinking of the fact that most delivery drivers are now on either e-bikes or scooters or motorbikes, will there be a specific sort of parking loading place? Because I know that is an issue that we see in surrounding wards already, with bikes sort of being actually, in some cases, kind of parking illegally outside people's houses and not using designated loading bays, or there not being particular loading bays. So would there be specific, not just the route in, but will there be a specific loading bay, and has there been any thought to what kind of capacity that needs to be? And then sort of beyond, I guess, beyond the Deliveroo, it's the sort of the rise of e-commerce and vans coming in. And again, there's potentially quite a high need for capacity of loading bays there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Absolutely. As part of the assessment of the planning application, there has been an assessment undertaken of likely deliveries generated by the development, and on the basis of the predicted deliveries, there is dedicated loading facilities that will be provided throughout the development. But what is designed is that the access would be from specific routes, not necessarily through the estate. But yes, there will be dedicated loading facilities, and the assessment, the provision is based on comparable developments that have already been built out, where we've got data on the likely trips that have been generated for delivery and servicing. But as I say, throughout because as you rightly mentioned, the trends in deliveries could change in the future. There will be an ongoing monitor and manage process for the lifetime of the construction phase, and then beyond into the occupation of the complete development, where there will be ongoing monitoring of delivery and servicing to make sure that demand can be accommodated and adaptations can be made.
Councillor Trehi.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much for your presentation. Just coming in on that is the fantastic walkthrough and the different parks and the levels, and was really brilliant to see. But I was going to ask about e-bike usage, exactly that, and e-scooter usage and pedestrian safety. And as another sort of offshoot of that is sort of sight lines and female, particularly, people safety in terms of lighting and sort of cubby holes and the walkthrough, because there are so many exciting spaces there, that whether we've looked at safety.
Yeah, yes, Councillor. As part of the planning application, the design includes segregated cycle provisions, so we would envisage that cyclists would be using those areas. There would be a wider management strategy overarching for the site, which would be able to manage some of those activities. And then beyond that, as part of the planning application, there was a social inclusion assessment that was undertaken, and it was undertaken for the routes, the indicative routes within the site, but also the routes in the surrounding streets, to see where there may be some issues in terms of areas where there's poor lighting, where there's lack of CCTV. And we have, as part of that process, secured mitigation or contributions towards improvements to that but also within the site, as the reserved matters applications come forward, there will be opportunity to make sure that throughout the delivery of the scheme, the social inclusion assessments will be updated as the designs evolve.
I just wanted to also just to expand in terms of the council's secured a financial contribution of £2 million towards community safety and CCTV. This is over the 20-year period, so it's approximately 100,000 per year.
Through the chair, just for completeness, then, as we've gone through most of the list, there's also a contribution to review the controlled parking zones, which includes the estate. No, there hasn't been a question on that yet, but I'm sure it was coming.
Does anyone have a question on this topic? Councillor Kamal.
Sorry, yes, you do seem to be picking things that I've already noted down. Just to go back to the deliveries, I presume that the calculations were done using the TRICS database, which is, shall we say, not ideally modified for current conditions where more and more deliveries are being made by the net, and deliveries are done, and I am told that it is particularly lacking when it comes to assessments for deliveries with relation to PBSA, but that is another matter. One of the problems that I've had and I've raised before is how much dwell time have you put into the model for supermarket delivery trucks, because they can take, even on a ground floor thing, they can take 6 to 8 minutes. If they've got to go up to the 42nd floor of a block somewhere away and negotiate their way onto into the building and then into the lifts, going upstairs and then having it unpacked and come back down with 11,000 people, the chances of there not being a delivery in one of the specific delivery slots at any time of the working day is, I would have thought, quite low. And I do have worries when, especially when mention was made of access via the West Ken estate, because there is going to be some permeability between the two sites. And I can foresee, especially with the somewhat complicated arrangements that are down at the moment for deliveries to that, I can see people parking up on Aysgill Avenue and places like that and using the permeability to use their barrows or whatever, or to carry the deliveries through into the proposed new development. I couldn't see in the conditions any form of control of people using the West Ken estate to park and then to do deliveries into the proposals, both detailed and outlined before us this evening. But if I've missed that, could you please point it out to me?
Thank you, Councillor. As was just mentioned by my colleague, that is one of the concerns we as officers had when assessing the application. And so what we have secured is a contribution towards CPZ, so that what we can do is, what the Highways Department will be able to do and the parking team will be able to do is, as part of the monitor and manage process, if we observe that there's issues, we'll be able to introduce additional controls, which obviously would be done in co-production with residents, but we could introduce additional controls or other measures in terms of traffic reduction to protect the estate. And we have secured financial contributions so that we are able to introduce any measures that are required. Just following on from your point about the supermarket, as part of the assessment, there's an element as part of the overall delivery and servicing for the site, an element of consolidation that's been considered, so that would reduce dwell times, so that there will be lockers, concierge and other facilities within the site, so that multiple packages will be able to be dropped off in one location. And then where there is required for a longer dwell time, you'll be able to park one of the visitor spaces for that requirement. So it has been built in, and we will be ongoing monitoring throughout the process. And what we envisage as the scheme is built out and we start to get some commercial within the site, that there would be those movements would be internally, so that residents would be using the retail facilities, etc., that may be within the site, which are going to reduce those trips even further, if that makes sense.
A quick follow-up.
That answer actually raises more questions than it actually answers. But just briefly, are both the Gibbs Green estate and the West Ken estate currently subject to a CPZ? And if not, will they be introducing one? Will the residents of the various estates be consulted about whether they're included in a residence parking as opposed to estates parking management? And secondly, just the throwaway line from you about concierges raises an entirely new problem about the affordable housing, because once you have a concierge, the service charge level goes up through the roof, and that may make the affordable housing unaffordable because it's not included in the rent, but it's in the service charge.
Thank you, Councillor. Concierge was just an example. It could be something like Amazon lockers. There'll be a variety of measures in terms of consolidation to kind of reduce those vehicle movements and dwell times. So that was just given an example. As the schemes evolves and is built out through the reserved matters, more details of those will come back to committee. In relation to the estates, yes, they do have controlled parking already, but we've secured contributions so that it would be with co-production with residents. We don't introduce any, as a council, we don't introduce any restrictions without consultation, and we would with co-production with any residents, if we had to introduce any restrictions, we would deliver those to ensure that they don't prejudice what the current needs of the residents as well.
Just on a sort of higher level, I mean, what we've sought to do here, you can imagine you're looking at a 20+ year build programme, but a detailed scheme you know about. We've sought to mitigate the impacts that we are already aware of. The rest of it is a strategy about trying to future-proof it, so allowing that review to happen at the right time as we move forward. It's similar to what we did in Olympia, what we do on all the large sites. So that's why some things are clear and things are less clear, but as long as the framework is in there, allows you, like, for example, the CPZs, if the CPZs throw up an issue, then part of that process is we get to address that. But the point is that we've made the opportunity to do it at that point. I mean, we're still going through some of the things on Olympia now, and that was approved back in 2019. But there were elements in that specifically designed to future-proof it in the knowledge of a long build programme, which require further work to be done, as part of the implementation. And it would be the same here.
Thank you for that. Councillor Trahey, back to you for further questions.
Yes, I'm just going to go off a little bit on again looking at the amazing public spaces that this is going to introduce into this what's been a vast sort of derelict area for so long now, which it looks so exciting. I mean, the table reminds me of the High Line in New York City, so that bringing back to life something that was dead. So I'm going to ask two questions about ecology, really. Is firstly about native species. Firstly, I very much doubt we're losing anything from the Earls Court as it stands at the moment, because it is fairly derelict, so it doesn't. But the question is really about native species, is about ecological highways, and it not being like too manicured. There is going to be actual real ecology there and flora and fauna rather than just a nod to greenery. I did hear the 1,000 trees, which is fantastic. But if somebody would speak to that, that'd be great.
Yes, in terms obviously through the scheme and through the submission of reserve matter applications, there'll be a requirement for them to submit a landscape strategy. We've already given consideration to the deck, and obviously there needs to be a minimum depth in order to allow sufficiently large trees and shrubs to be planted. Overall, in top of that, there's obviously things around sort of drainage and suds that we need to address. But throughout, in terms of sort of biodiversity and urban greening, officers are satisfied that those points have been addressed and meet the requirements. Yeah, sorry, and also clearly our design request will be for native species to be planted where feasible.
Yeah, just to give you a bit of comfort on that, our colleagues in ecology have been very much involved with this all along. So what we're recommending today is informed by those discussions with them, and particularly on the native species, etc., in order to sort of bring forward a genuine sort of biodiversity kind of improvement on the site, and make sure that the ecological aspects of it are represented too, as well as just open space. And hopefully it's easy to say from the flyover, or fly through, or fly under, whatever it is, there's a mixture there.
Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, just on the matter of ecology and the greening. As a borough, obviously, we have declared a climate emergency, and as part of that, obviously, we need to build in climate resilience here. This is obviously going to be a 20-year build out, so obviously there's be a long time in terms of the landscaping, but not just in terms of native species, but has there been any provision or thought been put towards climate resilience in terms of the greening and the architecture of that green space as well?
Well, yeah, obviously, I think in terms of the overall sort of principles of the schemes, obviously, we're looking for green spaces to be planted on roofs, and there to be sort of provisions for greening where feasible across the scheme. Obviously, those details come forward, as I say, through the reserve matter applications.
I'm more specifically referring to climate resilience here, and understanding that obviously climate change is currently taking place right now. So how that's being built into the design of those green spaces.
Thank you, Councillor. So just to carry on from what John just said, so the current design codes kind of set up some of the principles of those key aspects, so particularly kind of green roofs, green infrastructure as part of individual plot development. So all of that is included, and that's also included as part of the kind of urban greening factor of the scheme as well. So that's all embedded in the principles, which then come forward through the future reserve matters application. So obviously, at the moment for the detailed plots, there is some understanding of that in terms of the podium and the upper floors in terms of external green, etc. But that will come forward on the future phases linked to the design codes.
So do you think you need further detail on this, on your questions? Because
I think it might be helpful to, I'm thinking things like more like, something like a build provision of rain gardens. And just I think this might be something if the Earl's Court team.
Yes, if I may ask, someone from ECDC to just quickly clarify the points.
Hi again. I've got my colleague Pete with me. He was again a registered speaker, and he can take you through the strategies. But just
May you have the microphone a bit closer?
I'm just introducing my colleague Pete. He can take you through a bit more detail. But just to be absolutely clear, we've made very firm commitments to over 1,000 trees on site, and that's a mixture of sizes. It's not little saplings on day one. With a lot of thought going to climate resilience, we've made a very firm commitment to a UGF of 0.4 and a BNG of 85%. Which is significantly above what the policy requires, but Pete can talk to a bit more detail.
And thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Sorry, I'm still quite awake.
Good morning soon.
Yes, we've spent a lot of time looking at the climate resilience of this. We've been partnering, we've been talking with the likes of Kew, we've been working with Imperial, and we've been working with West Brompton Cemetery. One of the things that we've been looking at is obviously a tree planting strategy. As Emma, my colleagues have pointed out, we're going to be planting over 1,000 trees. That also, of those, 70% of them are deciduous, because they aspirate more, and it's all about, and what they do is they cool the temperature around them, as well as the larger leaves give you more shading. We have been working with Kew on a tree planting strategy for 2,100, not just 2050, because trees last for a very long time. And the whole point of that is that it's about improving the microclimate all around that. So we're looking at very much a wider aspect of climate resilience, about improving the air quality, the temperature, the feeling, the humidity as the temperatures rise. We've designed that into the planting. It links into our strategies for water resilience on the site, and everything right down to the colour and the makeup of the materials and the surfaces that we've got, all about reducing the temperatures.
And then specifically on the water resilience, obviously, I'm thinking of things like, obviously, here on King Street towards Ravenscourt, we've got our rain garden as a help to reduce floodwater mitigation. Could you speak to anything like that? Obviously, how are you going to manage that?
Yeah, so we're very aware of the changes that climate change is bringing to the amount of rainfall that we get in larger sudden bursts, and how we can actually utilize that. So all of the 20 acres of public realm will be maintained and watered using rainwater captured on the site, and grey water only. We've got storage for a minimum of 40 days, so we can withstand a 40-day drought. And that water maintenance and that water strategy, in terms of the resilience that we've got, means that the runoff from the site is significantly lower than when the Great Halls were here. But also, if we were to do nothing but greenfield across the site, our runoff into the combined systems would be less than that. So we've focused very heavily on making sure we don't create other issues in relation to flooding. There's a multiple benefit to the strategies we've put in place.
Thank you very much, Councillor. For me, I don't want this again to be.
Yeah, that's all I was going to say. Thank you, Chair. That's all from me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm conscious. Sorry, Councillor Trey, do you have more questions at this stage?
Not at this stage.
Not at this stage. At this stage, I would like to say, because we did say that we would have a break. As the committee, would you like a quick 5-minute break and then to come back? We'll just make it 5 minutes. If I can ask the developer and members of the committee not to mingle and not to have conversations at this stage. And we'll be back in 5 minutes. So that would be 9:47. Thank you.
If you want to ask a community question,
Yeah, I would like to.
not to ask.
Yeah. If I may ask everyone to start taking your seats again, so we can restart, I guess. After 11, it's the cocktails. Sorry, we'll be starting in 1 minute, so please take your seats, everyone. We'll be starting again. Councillors.
Helpful.
Councillor Kamel, if you would like. Oh yeah, I forgot about Patrick. We're just waiting for our Councillor Walsh. Is that okay? So thank you, everyone. We might resume. Councillor Trey, if you would want to continue questioning.
Yes, once again, thanks for the presentation. And I particularly love the big build, the landmark building, and the thought that has gone into the materials and the particularly the top of the building. I mean, I just see it. It's going to be our Empire State Building, and I love it. But what it does say to me is that we're using a lot of high quality and important mineral material in building these large buildings. And so I want to really ask about the balance with, again, going to climate change, about carbon offset, about carbon embed, about, you know, yes, ground source heat pump, yes, but how, how do we think this balances out in the whole?
Yeah, through the chair, obviously, we've assessed this application also in terms of both sustainability and energy. Throughout our discussions, the applicants have targeted quite high level targets, particularly around sustainability. For example, they're currently targeting an excellent certification with an aspiration to achieve outstanding. Also looking to target other matters with regard to the office building, the residential building quality, and design, also looking at design to passive house principles as well. They're looking at introducing an all-electric energy strategy across the site, implementing solar PVs, the implementation of a fifth generation ambient loop energy network. So this will effectively allow energy to be used by other adjoining sites if necessary. They're looking obviously to lower pollutants across the site in terms of reusing as much of the buildings as they can, and particularly in terms of demolition works, and reducing the amount of operational work. So there's a series of principles all the way through the sustainability strategy, which has been set out in terms of a site-wide energy strategy, and also in terms of the key ones for the detailed plots.
Through the chair, section 17.6 objectives for the future reserve matters which obviously the predominant area of the development. There's a series of bullet points there which target some of the environmental objectives that we will secure through the reserve matters, including things like 20% materials to be reused or recycled. So all this would minimise the carbon impact. There's other stuff around construction waste being diverted, more than 95% from landfill, reuse, recycling or recovery, 65% of operational waste from all uses to be diverted from landfill as well. So there's a whole series of environmental objectives detailed in there.
Thank you very much. If I may now ask a few questions myself. Now, clearly, ECDC have raised the bar quite high when it comes to community engagement, not just in terms of the consultation, but what they've done with the charities and funding those. So what does this scheme deliver for the wider community? And what is the plan? Obviously, we're looking for a 20-year almost horizon here. What is the plan for continued engagement with the community, but also to continue to deliver for the communities, not just in terms of, as we heard, Northern Road and the surrounding area, but more widely for everyone?
Again, I don't want to put words into the applicant's mouth, but obviously they've made a commitment to continue their community engagement, subject to planning permission being granted. Notwithstanding that, we've attached a condition, condition 66 in the recommendation, which is about community liaison. So we're expecting there to be continual dialogue through the different stages, particularly as members have raised concerns around the construction. We feel that that's a critical point of dialogue with local residents. So we've made sure that we've secured a condition to that effect.
Just in terms of land uses, there is scope for the delivery of community floor space within the detailed phase and two of the lattice phases. There are conditions attached to require the delivery of public toilets and community space within that detailed phase, and to require the delivery of the freestanding community hall at a certain trigger point within the rest of the development, so as to make sure that the needs of the existing and the emerging community are served. There's also a financial contribution that's been secured towards the improvement of local facilities, community facilities, in the event that there isn't timely delivery of the first of those on-site provisions.
So, through the chair, on a more general level, I mean, I think it goes all the way through the scheme, everything from employment and jobs for borough residents on the scheme, etc., to the way that it's going to develop to entice the state residents, to come into the development so that it's outward looking rather than inward looking, to improvements to public transport, etc. The whole thing is geared up towards, even in terms of the nature of the research and development stuff from some of the offices potentially as well. The whole focus of it, I think, in the round is very much geared towards that, aside from the very specific matters that colleagues have just highlighted now. I think it's part of the general agenda in terms of what they're trying to build.
Thank you. And I must say, I mean, we've seen it here today as well, that we don't usually get applications, especially of this scale, that have more letters in support than objections, and definitely not, people coming into the to the meeting to speak in support, and clearly many have come here for that and to support that. Just more specific question. Obviously, there is the meantime use of the community hub that is there. At what point will that no longer be functional? And is there a plan for phase one of the project to have community spaces?
Yes, there is a community hall provision, which is approximately 420 square meters in space. So that comes within phase one, which is it's not part of the detailed element. However, we're expecting that will come forward fairly quickly as part of the sort of the public realm works that will be connected to those detailed plots. So there's an aspiration. Obviously, I think the applicants have seen the benefits that the existing meanwhile use has brought to our local residents, and they're keen to continue that through the establishment of the new community hall.
Thank you. I'm pleased actually to hear that. And I did want to ask also, we have, of course, what is called the West Kensington Innovation Cluster, which is in phase 8, which would be the last phase. You mentioned that we'll also have the incubator coming in phase 1, if I understand correctly. Is there also, in the other phases, will we also have the more innovative aspects of the scheme to provide, incubators and lab space and affordable workspace? This is for me one of the most attractive selling points. Obviously, the housing in the public realm, but the innovative aspects, looking towards the future, and again, what will be happening in 20 years' time when who knows where we'll all be. That is for me the most attractive thing. So I want to be clear exactly, what the vision is, what the big sell is, and how is this making, as you said earlier, the framework to future-proof this and to make sure that we're not just thinking with 2025 terms about cars in CPZs, but also the offer over the next 20, 30, 50 years. So yeah, if you could just spell out to me the whole offer in 1 minute, if you can.
Through the chair, well, I think it starts, as Matt said, with the bringing forward the incubator office building. That's a commercial building, but nevertheless, it allows you to, some of that might come forward as lab space, for example, but it's early in the program and therefore it's beneficial. What sits behind that then is a deal on the minimum level of affordable workspace and the discounts associated with that. So it's separate from that. That is secured through the 106 moving forward. The incubator space, if you like, is an added bonus that may contribute early doors, and we get to see what happens with it later on. So it's those two things need to be read together. Now, linked to both of those then is the sort of green tech and who you can attract in and how you do it. So there's flexibility there about how they approach this, and how they do the deals with potential tenants, with a view to trying to attract the right tenants in to sort of enable that kind of seeding, if you like, of what they're trying to do in terms of creating a particular type of desire there. So again, the framework is there for it to work, but the flex has to be there as well, because they have to sort of modify the approach depending on how they go. But there's a bare minimum there that we can sign up as being acceptable to us at this point in time. And potentially that might improve, depending on how successful they are at attracting the right occupiers in, which then leads into the matter that Catherine talked about, which is the employment-related accommodation as well. There's a lot of things here that overlap and would have a knock-on beneficial impact should they all come to fruition.
If I could just come in quickly on the nuts and bolts of it, their employment space and specifically R&D is a priority land use within the overall development, and there's a minimum requirement of delivery of 40,000 square metres in the early stages, with a minimum of 50,000 and up to 155,000 square metres over the all phases development. And there is an expectation that a significant amount of that will come forwards as being suitable for green tech industries that are flexible and adaptable to emerging technologies and businesses, business practices and laboratory uses. And the discussions on the Section 106 requirements for that are ongoing.
Thank you very much. Just another question we had from Neve, who said that youth voices helped shape the scheme. So obviously it is connected to what we're just saying, but I was hoping maybe you could tell us, how that was, and also what is the offer from the scheme, if there is something specific for young people. Of course, in a sense you can say everything is, but if there's something specific to that.
as you say, the entire development is designed for everyone. So for the most vulnerable to the most least vulnerable in society, there's a substantial amount of community and cultural spaces available. That also healthcare spaces, some of which could potentially be used for nursery facilities. The public realm is going to be designed to be not just in the parks, but also the public throughways to be play on the way for younger, really young people. And obviously young adults and younger people will benefit from these environments as much as other sectors of the demographic.
Yeah, if I can also add that obviously within the economic development package as well, there's a whole series of initiatives designed to look to deliver skills and training for local residents, and particularly looking at supporting local startups and young people within the borough as well.
Thank you very much. We've seen also, if I may with everyone, we've seen also in other parts of the country, especially concerns with big developments, that these will have an impact on neighbouring services from NHS. I think we mentioned to other local provision. What is the office's assessment on that, and how this may impact, from dentists, for example, tends to be something that usually comes up as concerns. Again, obviously with the caveat that we're looking at 20 years in the future, where obviously all the problems with health services will be resolved by then. But with what you know now, what is your assessment?
Yeah, we've obviously the environmental impact assessment has assessed what potential impacts the development will have through the different phases of the development, not only on local medical services, but also school places, nurseries. There's going to be provision of a nursery from the outset within the RBKC planning application, with the potential delivery of a second nursery within the latter phases within our borough. So overall, we felt that those questions have been answered in terms of the potential impacts and the necessary mitigations that are coming forward in terms of, obviously, there's contributions towards. So whilst there isn't a necessity to deliver additional school places or build new schools within the borough at this stage, there is obviously, notwithstanding that, there is a contribution secured towards our existing education facilities.
Thank you very much. That's good to know, especially as I hadn't picked up on the potential for more nurseries to be added. I guess my next question is, usually this committee, this would be our first question, but there's so much to digest here that it's not been so early on, but it's about affordable housing and whether officers are confident that the affordable housing provision has been maximised on this scheme, and if you can explain to us why that is and the steps you took to ensure that that was the case.
Yeah, I think in short, I mean, the affordable housing offer is way above what the viability suggests it could sustain, and that is a direct result of the political kind of context and the desire to incentivize developers to come up with affordable housing offers that are perhaps more than they would need to otherwise. So in terms of what it looks like, I mean, at the moment it's 35% affordable by habitable room, which is the metric that the GLA London Plan uses. So it's a good offer, and that's why we've endeavoured to get this to a position where we can recommend it for approval, because the level of affordable housing is much higher than we think it would be if you adopt a normal kind of viability route.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Back to second round of questioning for anyone who wants to ask questions. Councillor Painter?
Just a quick one to build on the affordable housing. Is there a plan to prioritise that for residents of the borough?
The arrangement, as I understand it, would be a normal arrangement whereby we would have nominations to the affordable housing. So that would be handled by our own housing allocation. So it would reflect our priorities. So in that respect, yes. And it would be genuinely affordable by our standards as well. So, you know, as long as we are involved with that business end of it, then we will ensure that it works for our benefit, and that is the intention.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walsh.
Sorry, I'm not entirely clear. You say typically speaking, we would obviously nominate a provider. So can you explain what's the metrics you're using for this one for the calculation?
The metric reference was to the percentage affordable. The actual delivery mechanism is our own nominations to the homes, the new homes. So we control access to the new homes off our waiting lists, as it were.
So
as a council.
Would it be accurate to say in summary that yes, we will be providing accommodation to borough residents?
Yeah, we would allocate according to our nominations agreement.
As in the council nomination?
Yeah.
Okay, so the short answer is yes, we are providing for local residents.
Oh yes, so yeah, whenever we've got the nominations, that is our priority. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Any further questions, Councillor Carmel?
Right.
Okay.
I have about 12. Should I break them up into? Some of them are quite short.
If you can group them in logical groups that also are sort of brief and
okay.
But obviously inclusive, and yeah, we'll get the answers.
Could I have some clarification on paragraph 12.173 about the heritage assets and the list of assets that have been taken into account seems at least to be strange. So, for instance, you talk about on assets within the borough, you talk about the effects on my church, which is All Saints Putney Bridge, which is grade 2-star listed, but make no mention about the effect on the listed St Andrew's Fulham Field. Also, for instance, there is assessment against several buildings of merit within the borough, but absolutely no mention as to my childhood home of the listed terrace at 62 to 68 Lily Road in the table that's provided. Could you tell me how the list was populated and what were the criteria for inclusion for it's Heritage Table 4, by the way, on page 315. How the list was compiled, because it seems a very strange list.
Thank you, Councillor. So just to clarify, this should be read in conjunction with the tables 1 to 3 in the report. So those tables identify the assets that were considered overall in terms of all the assets that were considered as part of the assessment. For kind of clarity for members, we've obviously then summarised those assets that we feel there is a degree of harm that would warrant consideration in terms of less than substantial harm in the latter tables. So there are assets that are identified in the first 3 tables, as I say, that were considered, but they were scoped out of the summary assessment because there was not considered to be harm to their setting.
Thank you. On a totally different subject, going on to the proposals for older person accommodation, it lists in the application as to that it's still not decided where it'll go, but it mentions WK08, WK09, V1, and I think F as well. Do we have any clarification as to which of the plots that it will be going on to, and roughly what the yield of beds available for older persons, whether there will be any affordable element to the older person accommodation? And people who were here at the last planning committee will know that provision of affordable older care is a subject close to my heart as I'm getting older. And if you could give me some sort of further details on the older person provision that's in the, I think mostly in the RMA.
Yes, so the use class itself falls within use class C2 and is badged as healthcare or older person's housing, and that's specifically care home, residential, institutional uses. Care homes do not of themselves incur an affordable housing contribution due to the nature of the use, so they stand outside of that provision. The application metric that's used is actually by unit number. Older person's housing, where there is an element of care but it's not an institution, actually fall within use class C3. So that kind of accommodation could fall within any plot where there's a residential accommodation proposed, and we'd have to wait and see as the RMAs unfold where that will go. The specialist care home and hospital facilities, as you say, are only proposed in the outline phases in C, T and W, and I think they are mainly in the latest phases, that is to say on Lilybridge Road Depot, except for development zone C, which from memory I think is down by the Lily Road. But again, it's very difficult to say with any certainty what will come forwards. There is no minimum delivery requirement, so it might be the case that gets squeezed out by other uses. And until the RMAs come forward, we can't give any guarantees about whether that will actually be manifest in the development at the end.
Just carrying on from that, in paragraph 4.28 of the report, it says proposed new homes include the provision, I think there's a missing word, of a small element of self-contained housing for older people with an element of care provision, which could come forward. Is this included in the grand total of older person housing, or is this in addition? And might this be fall within the affordable housing element of the overall application?
Yeah, I think it, as Catherine's pointed out, what's been applied for is older person housing within the use classes C2. There is obviously a bit of a grey area here in terms of older person residence developments that are classified under C3. So again, if that is the intention, that would have to come forward through the residential element of the application, the C3 classification, and that would trigger an element of affordable housing. But if we're talking here specifically about older person housing under C2, where there's an element of care, then that falls outside the affordable housing provision.
Thank you. Now, I remember from previous applications for the demolition of Earls Court 2 in particular, and looking at condition 66, subparagraph E, and particularly with work in and around TfL land, it talks about liaison with the local community for exceptional hours of work. Now, I know Transport for London can get very specific about works overhanging their land, and I know there's an apron that covers a large proportion of the site. But what sort of percentages of time are we currently looking at where there is going to be potentially noisy works between the hours of sort of 1:30 in the morning and 5:30 in the morning? And how long is it envisaged that this might last? And I noticed that the condition that I mentioned, condition 66, merely says that you have to inform the community liaison committee about when it's taking place, and they don't have any say or veto or control over it. Presumably, each time they want to do it, they would have to provide a schedule to us as the LPA.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily applies to works connected to TfL or one of the other operators. What it could mean, it could be that specific equipment, construction equipment, needs to be brought to the site, and obviously, given the nature and the size of the equipment, it may need to be carried out outside within those sort of exceptional hours. It's a fairly standard practice that's done on most developments when things like cranes and large equipment need to be delivered or removed from a site.
Councillor Comer, is it a follow-up on this?
No.
Okay, sorry to interrupt just as you're getting started, but let me give you a break. Pass on to Councillor Painter, and just to everyone else, I appreciate the time. If you could keep your questions brief as well. I love the setups, but it's the punchlines that I will help us move on. So, yeah.
Well, I'm very good at being short, so I shall continue. Thank you. Without going into the detail of it, I'm just really keen to know if there is a detailed plan on how to manage the noise that Councillor Carmel raised, but also the dust, particularly for the neighbouring estates.
Yes, there's a whole series of conditions that deal with sort of addressing issues regarding noise or air quality, dust management plans. But again, the umbrella in some ways of this is condition 66, which is this community liaison group. So the intention is that there'll be continual dialogue once the contractors are appointed, where advance warning is given to local residents that, for example, specific work or a specific nature of equipment needs to be delivered to the site. It's a condition that we've used on a lot of major developments, like Olympia. We also used it on the magistrates' court development as well, to very good effect in terms of how the contractors and developer communicated with local residents.
Well, just to clarify, there's two levels here. The condition is primarily about channels of communication between the developers and the contractors and the residents, and keeping them ahead of the curve in terms of information. There's a whole raft of controls that sit within the environmental health legislation, environmental legislation, that deal with issues to do with noise, etc. So they're very often separate agreements with colleagues in environments, which then they have to then get consent for extended hours as well as. So there's two different avenues there, which from our perspective, the important one is that communication happens consistently and in advance of whatever's going to be working. Separately, and in the background, there will be applications to colleagues in environment for example, extended hours of use with an explanation. So the two separate things. One is the planning related and the other one isn't, but they do overlap.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Walsh.
Just a quick one there. Obviously, I think was it earlier mentioned about, was it a resident liaison group being established? is all of what you mentioned there going to be incorporated into the scope of that resident liaison group? So, or more to the point, how are they going to be involved so that residents are being kept informed constantly about how this is working?
Yeah, the reference is actually to a community liaison group, which is condition 66. So yeah, the idea is that obviously that liaison group would need to be formed in agreement with the local planning authority. And then the requirement is that that local residents and businesses are informed of the building programme, particularly in terms of demolition and construction works as the different phases progress.
So in summary, there's going to be that framework to ensure that throughout this scheme, whenever there's going to be significant work, whenever there's going to be disruption, that there is that mechanism, that framework built into this scheme throughout its entire 20-year existence to ensure that that communication is always there.
That's the intention, Chair. Yeah, as a councillor, I mean, they're only as good as the effort you put in, and the developer has to buy into the kind of benefits of these. If you look at something like the Magistrates Court, that had a poor start but really gained traction with local residents, and they found it beneficial, so that worked really well. Olympia was similar, wasn't so great to begin with, and now it's much better in terms of reaching out to the maximum. So we'd be looking to set up the same thing here, but there needs to be goodwill on both sides in terms of making the best use of the process, because the condition will require the terms of reference, but the devil's in the detail. You have to be committed to sort of sharing information in advance so that so both parties get the benefit out of it, whether it be the residents and other stakeholders who get to trust the developer for giving them information in advance, and the developer themselves who then gains that, you know, that goodwill with the community that as they go forward and through, you know, what will be a very long process here. So
yeah, let's see.
the
Obviously,
structure is there, but it has to be employed properly.
yeah, obviously, we're looking to the future, and obviously there is always unknowns to the future, but we seem to be starting from, we seem to be starting from a better place here, at least, where there does seem to be quite a good communication between the developer and the residents. So
yeah,
what's encouraging to hear at this point is that there's a plan to continue that conversation further into the development itself, and for that to continue throughout the development itself, to incorporate clear communication from the developer to the residents about any sort of major disruptions that may be taking place. That's really what I wanted to establish.
And not forgetting that's a means for responding to any complaints as well, and it's a live situation, so it can evolve depending to whatever becomes a priority at the time. So it doesn't just cover demolition and construction and times and dates. It also goes to you know, a named person being available to deal with any concerns that might be expressed, and a structured way of dealing with them and reporting back and answering them, so that they have that comfort of knowing they can speak to somebody, and somebody will look at it and something will get done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add is also that, you know, given that this is potentially a 20-year build out, you're not going to be dealing with one contractor on the site. There's going to be a series of contractors. It's making sure that those communication lines are there, particularly for residents, if they feel they need to complain or they've got an issue, that they've got somebody to contact that can deal with the matter.
Sorry, through the chair, just to clarify, this is not left to the discretion of the developer. We will have control over this process. The terms of reference for the community liaison group will need to be agreed with us prior to any work starting on site. And we have plenty of experience from other major schemes within the borough about how these things work best and what doesn't work, and make sure it's not a token vehicle. It's actually a meaningful vehicle to actually get proper engagement and proper accountability.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kamel, back to you with.
Thank you. I'll try and keep it very short. Could you please provide me with the density of the buildings, both or separately in LBHF and RBKC?
Because the scheme's a hybrid, we don't have a specific density because we don't know what the exact quantum is going to be. but we are anticipating it will be fairly dense. I'm afraid I can't tell you. I can tell you we've got the numbers across the sites, but because the areas are different, the densities will skew the densities.
Yeah, well, it appears to me that the density on the LBHF side of the red line is going to be significantly higher than the RBKC side. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Not necessarily, but the point is that, well, not the point, but density has been removed from the London Plan assessment. It's about optimising site capacity rather than sticking to a particular metric.
Yeah, but London Plan is currently consulting on reducing the affordable housing level from 35% to 25%. So congratulations to the officer for getting in early and getting the 35%. But I mean, that's,
Sorry, just to answer your question, Councillor Carmer, but the issue here is whether the scheme works. It's across the whole spectrum of metrics, not just density. It has to work in terms of placemaking, in terms of scale, and the way the report is structured identifies how it works in and around. So in those circumstances, you couldn't be refusing something on density if it works in any other respect. So that is the rationale behind removing it from the London Plan rather than some mischievousness, should we say, on behalf of the GLA. And that's the way we've approached this. Does it work as a whole? Are the benefits as a whole, sufficient to outweigh any harm that we've identified? That's the rationale behind the way the report's structured.
And that would have been covered in my preamble. In the introduction, we had some talk about the ERA, or employment-related accommodation. To fill me in so I understand how this works, because I'm not sure I've come across this before. What are the criteria for this? What constitutes working in the local environment? What sort of distances are involved from the site, and how many units of ERA are we currently pondering on?
The details are still being discussed and finalised, but it's anticipated that 15% of all market housing will be made available as ERA, employment-related accommodation. That will be marketed to persons employed within or in close proximity to the site for a particular period. But the actual details about the mechanics of how that will work are still being thrashed out in terms of the timescales and the distances. And then there'd be a cascade mechanism for it. And it would be a kind of shared ownership plus rent to buy product specifically for people who fall outside of the thresholds for shared ownership, conventional shared ownership.
You talked about it being available for a timescale, and then you said that it would be market housing. Then you said it would be included in the rent to buy sector. I'm sorry, I'm not managing to get the three together, so I actually understand exactly how it will work. I mean, I understand that negotiations are ongoing, but can I just have a little bit more details? So it's 15% of the total accommodation or 15% of the market housing?
No, sorry, apologies if I didn't explain myself very clearly. It's completely separate of the affordable housing offer. So it only relates to market housing. It would be 15% of the total market housing across any plot would be made available for this particular product. And it would be, my understanding is that there would be a deposit, a rental, and then an opportunity to purchase at a discounted rate. But it's probably something the applicant would need to come back on with. But as I say, the precise details of its availability to people are still being thrashed out.
Sorry, Councillor, just to clarify, you've got your affordable housing, you've got your market. This is a sort of more bespoke attempt to sort of bridge the two with a more affordable route, shall we say, without being affordable. So it is market housing. The idea is that there would be an opportunity to rent, And the deal would be that you pay your rent. I think at the end of the year, you've then got enough of the deposit. So then you move to the purchase. That's the rationale behind it. And it was intended initially to be a product linked to the Earls Court development, with a sort of relationship, obviously, with a large quantum of commercial and their aspirations of attracting people into the area. It's now got a possibility of going wider after being initially advertised for that purpose. But the fundamentals are that it's a new product, effectively. It's not part, it doesn't come out of the affordable. It does come out of the market, but it's a different element of market. It's introducing a new, cheaper version of market, but more expensive version than affordable.
So it's in effect, it's a type of discount market sale or rent. So you could actually, if you were working in the comms department and wanting to sell a good news story, say that the affordable element is over 35%.
On a live stream. So no, it's not. It's very much a specialist kind of development, and it's geared towards giving people an opportunity to sort of save up for a deposit while paying their rent, and therefore being able to move to the purchase. That's the key to it. But also it's linked very much to the kind of employment on the Earls Court site itself. So the intention is to try and incentivize employees, etc., onto the site by offering this additional facility.
Just for a point of clarification, before you come in, Councillor Kamal, my understanding was that this was exclusively for H&F, Hammersmith Fulham businesses, an additional, anything known as Affordable Plus. Is that a different scheme, or is that, can you just clarify?
Sorry, it's badged in the report as being a form of Affordable Plus tenure.
Yeah.
It's specific to Earls Court.
Okay.
The discussions about qualification and availability could potentially flow into it being available only for H&F residents. And that's something we could investigate in the negotiations.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Walsh.
Sorry, can I just clarify? You say could be H&F residents or will be H&F residents? It's quite a big difference between the two. And
I guess there's also the complication that they might not be H&F residents at the moment, but they would be if they took on it. People
yeah,
might
but by default, anybody that moves to the Hammersmith side of Earls Court development would become the H&F residents. So, I mean, my point is about accessing this specific scheme. Would this be firstly for H&F residents or not, or how? Because you made a point, it might be. I mean, my question is there a condition to secure a preference for H&F residents?
I'm sure it's something that we.
It was envisaged as a means, as something additional that could be added to incentivise people. It was linked to the employment on the Earls Court site. It was an Earls Court product and part of their kind of badging of the opportunities. They've made the concession that there's a sort of potential kind of cascading. If the demand for that is lower, then there's a potential for bringing in others from outside the Earls Court site, which would be, you know.
Yeah, so first preference or first dibs would be to H&F, and then obviously if not taken up, if not possible, then to a wider audience.
When you say H&F, you mean Earls Court?
Yeah, the H&F side.
Yes. But plan A is Earls Court, and then with the cascade mechanism out to a wider catchment area within the borough.
Okay, thank you.
I think, would either member need a clarification? I think I've got that covered, but I think we will be moving to the vote soon. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Soon, not yet. But no, we will be moving to the vote soon. So I would just ask everyone, if you have questions that are good to know the answer and that you need to know the answer before the vote, it would be good to have the need to know first. But of course, that there is, so yeah, please, let's carry on.
Paragraph 4.62, and I think that in the introduction there was an addendum to the addendum, where 4.62 says the viewing gallery will be accessible to residents. Did I misunderstand as you were introducing this that that has been slightly modified? And if it hasn't been modified, is the residence only of the block where the viewing gallery is on levels 39 and 40, or is it to the entire red line of the site?
Sorry, just make sure I understood the question there. There are two additional bullets to be added to the heads of terms. That one of them is to secure and maintain that public viewing gallery, if you like, for want of a better term, details of which will be resolved through the 106. So that is the public opportunity to use a sort of viewing level in one or more buildings to be determined.
So I just want clarification on the word public viewing gallery, because 4.62 says with a viewing gallery accessible to residents of the building.
Yeah, I think the intention there is that this is a communal space that is available for the residents of WBO4, which is the tallest building only.
That isn't the one that's having the viewing gallery. That is for residents, but there's a requirement that because that couldn't be provided in respect to that building, for a number of reasons, that they would look at other buildings to give public access to a viewing gallery to those, mostly commercial buildings, I suspect. So
the best view won't be available for local residents who have to put up with 15 to 20 years of building work.
There are problems with making residential buildings accessible to members of the public. But there are opportunities to provide public access to equally sort of substantial buildings, although not quite as tall as that one. And that is to be delivered through the mechanism of the 106. So you're right about the residents, but that's a very specific building. That's not the one that we're talking about for the viewing gallery for the public.
I think also one needs to take into consideration the scale and footprint of the WBO4. In order to achieve public access, that would require probably at least one more additional lift for the public, just for public use, and it would have quite a negative effect in terms of the layout of the building itself, in terms of impacting on unit numbers. We feel that there's more scope and much better use looking at public access to one of the roofs of the commercial buildings, which will come forward. So it could potentially be within the cluster off Empress Place or within one of the later clusters off West Cromwell Road.
Thank you. I hear what you say. All I will say in comment is that the Mopac building, Empress State Building, has a viewing gallery up on the top floor, and it is accessible providing you make arrangements, and that is a secure building, it being Mopac. And if they can manage it there, because I've been to a number of events up on that top floor, I'm sure that with goodwill, they can give something back to local residents on that. But moving swiftly on, the report refers to the Cadent gas inspection area I think it's to the south of Sharnbrook House, and the various covenants that I know covenants aren't technically a matter for a planning application, but I know that the gas authorities are very keen that it's not damaged because it is a very major inspection pit. Are officers happy that there are sufficient safeguards to ensure that access and safety of that particular site will continue?
Kate Guest actually did comment on the planning application. So paragraph 5.58 says they've got no objection in principle, however, highlight need to prevent damage to assets or interference. They've requested an informative be added to ensure works do not impact on Cadence easements. So that's something that we'd be looking to add to any decision notice.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kamal, the next one.
Page 39 of the report refers to the whole life cycle carbon assessment. Does this include all the demolition works that took place to include Earls Court 1 and 2?
No, it doesn't.
Page 91, paragraph 2.20, talks about flood zone, it being flood zone 3. Can I ask, is it 3A or 3B?
Sorry, Councillor, I do not know the answer to that.
And just while we're on that, it says most of the area is flood zone 3. What is the remaining area, please? And which part of the site is not in flood zone 3?
Off the top of my head, I'm thinking it would be flood zone 2 and it would be areas towards the northern end of the site.
Frequently on large applications like this, and this is the only opportunity we get to do it, because it has a large number of usages put forward in the whole application, hybrid, and that we normally put controls on the hours of operation for various uses. I may have missed it, but has this been considered by officers?
Yes, obviously there is a very wide range of uses that are proposed, and it's proved quite difficult to pin down which hours each use will benefit from. So there is an additional condition on the addendum which seeks agreement to the submission of operational management plans, which will include details of hours of operation and any spill out use, etc. Yes, apologies. Could I just come in very quickly in response to the ERA? It's to say that it is part of the upstream benefit for local residents, and it is intended that it will benefit them as a priority, and that is going to be part of the discussions going forwards on the Section 106. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Sorry, your microphone, Councillor.
Thank you very much. My next one is part clarification for me, because I'm not sure I understand it. Condition 90 and the condition relating to HVO, which is, I think, hydrogenated vegetable oil. Can you, it doesn't make sense to me. Can you just sort of go through that, that it has to use HVO generators, but if suitable alternatives are not available about something, and I just don't understand what the phraseology is trying to condition.
Yeah, I think the intention, obviously, particularly for the early phases, is that they use the HVO fuel generators. Although clearly, given that this is effectively a 19-year build out potentially, we don't know what will come forward in terms of the future. So the idea is that obviously clearly what we're not looking for is obviously carbon generators. What we're looking for is generators that will be net zero. So whether or not it's HVO or an alternative.
Your microphone, when you're ready.
It's going through the list.
In the meantime, while you collect your papers, if anyone else would like to ask another question, now is a good opportunity before we move on to the final votes. One more question, please.
Yes, something I always ask with tall buildings is, and I know there are, I think, 3 fire safety reports, and there are a number of fire-rated lifts, just so I can have some certainty as to everything being, want of a better word, hunky-dory, and there's enough room for all fire safety vehicles to get in the awful event of any particular scare. Could you give us, show us on the map how much room is there for fire brigade vehicles, and how many fire-rated lifts are proposed across the site?
In terms of the question about fire-rated lifts, the detail at the moment is only available for the detail plots. So I think they're summarised in section 14 of the report. I think so. Page 337 summarises the numbers of fire lifts and staircases that will be within each of the buildings. Obviously, in terms of meeting the sort of the building safety regulator, which will be the sort of the gateway 2 stage, it's not a matter of just obviously meeting the requirements within the buildings, but it's also meeting the relevant design requirements in terms of fire safety standards in terms of access to the buildings as well.
And just to inform me for any future application, could you tell me the difference between a firefighting stair and what a protected escape stairwell?
Yeah. I'm not quite sure actually what the difference. It may be on the specification of the width of the staircase, I imagine.
I'm Owen Keating. I'm one of the Urban Design and Heritage Officers. The difference between a firefighting stair is one which is intended for use by the fire service, and the escape staircase is intended for use for evacuation, and sometimes they can be duplicated.
Just interested because I wasn't aware of it, and as were others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. Are there any final questions or comments as we move to the votes? Okay, as there are none, we'll be moving to the vote, and we'll take turns. Councillor Trey, will you be voting for, against, or not voting on recommendation 1 in the reports on page 14?
For.
Councillor Painter?
For.
Councillor Nemo?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Kamel?
For.
And I will also be voting for. And on recommendation 2 in the report, Councillor Trey?
For.
Councillor Painter?
For.
Councillor Nemo?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Kamel?
For.
And
can I just suggest that you state that we have borne in mind the items included in the addendum, just to top and tail.
We have borne in mind the items in the addendum. Thank you very much. And I will also be voting for. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. Many thanks to the officers, to fellow committee members for the questions. I think we did justice to what is a very detailed application. I'd like to commend ECDC. You've done great work over many years. It is, if I may say, an impressive scheme with everything that we've heard today: highways, public realm, the community offer, housing, and we really look forward to seeing it starting 2026, as you said, and seeing it over the next 20 years. Thank you so much, everyone. The draft minutes of the meeting will be published on our website shortly, and they will be approved formally at the next meeting on the 9th of December. Thank you very much.